Your strength isn't too bad. It seems that we underestimated you. A demon king stood up and sneered at the martial artists of the 33 heavens. He originally thought that with the difference of strength between the 33 heavens and Dark Abyss, it would be a completely lopsided battle. But he never thought that while the Dark Abyss had been weakened, the 33 heavens would actually rise up in their desperation and so many masters would appear. In this battle, although it seemed that the Dark Abyss's victory was assured, they would still have to pay a considerable price. But so what? If the Abyssals were able to leave the Dark Abyss, become the sole rulers of the 33 heavens and have their race continue onwards for another trillion years, even surviving the next great shattering of the universe, then all of these sacrifices would be worth it. The 4 upper true divinity Abyssals also attacked at this time. Demonic energies surged from their bodies, but they didn't attack the martial artists of the 33 heavens. Rather, they used their energies to draw up a massive array diagram. With so many true divinity Abyssals in front of them, the 8,600 Empyreans of the Dark Abyss also flew into the array diagram. This is bad. They are planning to go all out. With 60-some true divinities and over 8,000 Empyreans, this was the complete strength of the Dark Abyss. Now they gathered their strength in a grand array formation. If they were to attack like this, then their strength could be imagined. In a large-scale battle between martial artists, the effects of battle arrays were remarkable. If they scattered out the attack, they could absolutely sweep away the entire battlefield. The Dark Abyss had already formed an array formation. The only way for the 33 heavens to deal with them was to also form a battle array and meet them head-on. But in a situation where the overall strength of the 33 heavens was far inferior to the Dark Abyss's, if their battle arrays were to collide, then the 33 heavens were sure to suffer serious casualties. Death was not fearful. What was scary was to die without meaning. In this final battle, no one held back. Many martial artists of the 33 heavens even spat out blood essence and overdrew their own life potential. Everyone came into this battle with the determination to die. At this time, no one wavered. They were already pushed into a corner without any path to retreat. As the martial artists of the 33 heavens were ready to risk their lives in this battle, the Azura Sea separated below them and a mottled stone altar began to rise up from the sea into the skies. Divine Seal Altar? The martial artists of the 33 heavens certainly knew what the Divine Seal Altar was. It was a spirit treasure that the Azura Road Master had refined in the past. It had nearly been destroyed by the demon god's tomb master, and everyone thought that it was damaged beyond use or repair. But now it actually appeared. That is Dash? Everyone saw glittering Azura heavenly Tao runes shimmering atop the Divine Seal Altar. Could this be the work of the Azura Road Master? The martial artists of the 33 heavens were already in desperate straits. Now, as they saw these shimmering Azura heavenly Tao runes, all of them were left excited. If the Azura Road Master could help them out, then even the demon army before them wouldn't be enough. Everyone was filled with expectations. They all fervently wished to see the Azura Road Master display his heaven-transcending abilities to slaughter all their enemies. But this did not occur. Instead, runes shot out from the Divine Seal Altar, turning into divine beams of light that shrouded a part of the world. Use this heaven and man array as the foundation to protect me for 1 month. At this time, a dignified sound transmission echoed into the ears of the 33 heavens martial artists. They could immediately tell that this was Lin Ming's voice. Although the tone was the same as Lin Ming's voice, the majesty and momentum contained within was eternal and forever, like that of a supreme general, leaving everyone's hearts shocked. They all immediately realized that the one who moved to action just now was not the Azura Roadmaster but Lin Ming. In fact, the grand array that appeared in front of everyone was not purely the Azura Heavenly Tao array, but a heaven and man array formed from Lin Ming fusing together the world of the universe and the world of the body. His Majesty Human Sovereign is still in seclusion, but he can also help at this time? What Lin Ming said was to protect him for 1 month. This was different from the 100 years that they had expected before this. Would Lin Ming be able to leave seclusion in 1 month? Many people were inexplicably thrilled at this possibility. They didn't know that Lin Ming had used every method at his disposal to leave seclusion in advance. And they also didn't know that the demon god's tomb master had calculated this date ahead of time and had launched the final war to destroy Lin Ming before his seclusion finished. Protect His Majesty the human sovereign for a month. The martial artists of the 33 heavens all gripped their fists. Before this, they thought that all their hopes were ruined. But now they knew that as long as they could protect Lin Ming for a month, they might have a path to survival. As long as they could guarantee Lin Ming's safety, then the bloodline of the races of the 33 heavens would be able to continue onwards. This was their only chance. The heaven and man array covered all martial artists of the 33 heavens. At this time, no one held back. They poured all of their strength into this grand array. The grand array formed a giant barrier of light that radiated outwards. Colliding with the Abyssal's battle array, the Abyssal's array formation shattered. Dozens of Empyrean's Abyssals were unable to withstand the impact of energy through their bodies and instantly burst apart into pieces of flesh and bloody mist. In this horrifying collision, the deaths of Empyreans only took a brief moment. Retreat! The 4 demon kings shouted out in unison. The 33 heavens counterattack had exceeded their expectations. They didn't think Lin Ming would actually have such skills. Even in seclusion, he was still able to interfere in their fight. They didn't know what Lin Ming's plans were, and they also didn't know that Lin Ming had sent out a sound transmission telling the martial artists of the 33 heavens to protect him for 1 month. It was naturally impossible to reveal this plan to the Abyssals, otherwise they would desperately attack for a full month nonstop. This brat, he's already at death's door yet he's still putting up a last-ditch struggle. He's only delaying the end. This grand array formation can only defend and not attack, just like a turtle shell. If we continue to attack, then sooner or later we'll break through. The 4 demon kings soon discovered the weakness of the heaven and man array. This was a purely defensive array formation, but for Lin Ming, as long as he could defend, then it was his victory. However, defending against the siege of this demon army for an entire month was easier said than done. Although dozens of abyssal Empyreans had died in that brief collision just now, the martial artists of the 33 heavens weren't in a much better state. Many people had burned their blood essence and greatly depleted their life potential. Many of them had also received heavy wounds. Those that are wounded, hurry and restore yourselves. Those that are uninjured, guard the grand array. Everyone that has precious pills, take them all out and tend to the wounded. The one speaking was Divine Dream. She also moved first to set an example. She took out all the precious pills within her spatial ring to help heal others. Soon after, Soaring Feather, Astral Vault, and Emperor Xianxia also took out their pills. The Spiritas, Saint, Primal God race martial artists, all of them followed suit. A month would be a prolonged war. These precious pills and various energy stones would all be of great use and would need to be arranged ahead of time. At this time, no one hid anything any longer. They all understood that the only way to survive this calamity was to work together as one. Not attacking and only defending, you're just waiting for death. Although Lin Ming is strong, he is actually in seclusion and was also wounded by the demon god. The array formation he laid down can't stop us. The abyssal true divinities all attacked, working together to crush the defensive array formation in front of them. They knew that all array formations had a limit to the amount of energy they contained, and once this limit was reached, the array formation would naturally shatter. At that time, all that awaited the martial artists of the 33 heavens was slaughter. However, as the abyssal true divinities released world-shocking demonic strikes again and again, their complexion began to turn ugly. The firmness of this array formation had surpassed their imaginations. They attacked for such a long time, but there hadn't been much energy loss at all. How could this be? This array formation is strange. That Lin Ming, even in seclusion, he could lay down such an array? The abyssal true divinities muttered, shocked. In fact, it wasn't just them who were shocked, but the martial artists of the 33 heavens within the heaven and man array were also stunned by the effectiveness of this array formation. Within the array formation, they could feel the energy structure to an even clearer degree. The structure was a sublime and perfect composition, just like an eggshell. It dispersed the attack of every abyssal across the entire array formation, minimizing the impact of every strike to its lowest possible degree. This array formation was named the Heaven and Man Array. The light barrier that shrouded everyone was heaven, and the martial artists within were man. With heaven and man combined together, this was a perfect union to enforce the array formation. The abyssals possessed a horrifying strength. But even though they had over 60 true divinities and 8,000 Empyreans gathered together, they still couldn't manage to break past the array formation. And the person who set up the array formation was still in seclusion. Lin Ming, it seems he is far stronger than we expected. No wonder the Lord Demon God places so much importance on him. I thought that we could slowly erase the runes of the array formation, then all of us could attack together to completely destroy it. But it seems that this isn't a good idea. Let's change methods. Break through the defensive array with our battle array. The leading demon kings made a decisive change in tactics. They led the 8,000 some abyssal Empyreans and 60 abyssal true divinities to set up their battle array once more and directly attack the Heaven and Man array. We cannot let those abyssal get what they want. We've only managed to hold out for a day so far. There are still 29 days remaining. We must persist until the end. Otherwise, all that we have worked for will end in vain. Seeing the abyssals go all out, the martial artists of the 33 heavens revolved their blood vitality to the limit. Energy surged out from them in monstrous waves. They were inferior to the dark abyss in overall strength, but by relying on the Heaven and Man array they could greatly diminish the disparity. The 33 heavens had 28 true divinities that guarded 28 different spots within the array formation. As for the 1,800 some Empyreans, they were dispersed equally around the array formation. All of them utilized their energies to the limit to resist the abyssals. The abyssals began their attacks once more. The distant skies were already swallowed up by tumbling waves of demonic flames. Divine light howled and pierced through the world. The demon army's attack brutally fell down upon the Heaven and Man array. Bang! Like 1,000 stars exploding. All sounds faded as light seemed to disappear from the heavens and earth. Even the defensive abilities of the Heaven and Man array were unable to completely isolate out the impact of energy. Ripples appeared in the light barrier and spread out in all directions. 20 some Empyreans bore the brunt of this attack and weren't able to withstand the impact force. They were sent tumbling backwards, spitting out blood. 3 Empyreans amongst them blew apart as they were sent flying back, immediately dying a miserable death. People had died. Ever since the final apocalyptic war arrived, this was the first time that people from the side of the 33 heavens had died. The losses of these 3 Empyreans didn't seem like much, but everyone knew that this was only the beginning. Of the full month needed, only a single day had passed. As the battle continued, it would only become increasingly heated and violent. The energies consumed would grow larger and larger, and inevitably there would be more and more that died. This would be a bitter and protracted defensive war. Their only hope to live on was to last until the end. Heal the wounded. Divine Dream's voice echoed out from within the Heaven and Man array. As for the 3 Empyreans that had died, their mutilated and incomplete corpses had already been respectfully received into the spatial rings of their companions. At this time, no one was sad and no one mourned. This was because no one knew just when they themselves would become icy cold corpses that were put away by others. If some people managed to luckily live through this war, then their corpses would be buried and they would be lifted up as heroes, recorded in the annals of history and in the hearts of their descendants. But if they all died, then their corpses would be turned to ashes and the abyssals would mock them as naught but dead slaves. The martial artists of the 33 heavens silently distributed pills around. Everyone began to meditate and restore themselves because they knew that before long, the next attack of the abyssals would arrive. Since they were only defending and not attacking, the number of abyssals would not lower over time. But as for them, every collision meant that some people would die. And the more people that died, the weaker the defensive strength of the array formation would become. And the weaker the defensive strength of the array formation, the more people would die. This cycle would continue until the entire array eventually collapsed. These trash races are actually so difficult to deal with. The 4 demon kings all had gloomy complexions. Their attack had only managed to kill 3 Empyreans. It was hard for them to accept this as a victory. A good number of them burnt their blood essence, so it will surely be a problem for them to restore themselves. As for our demon army, no one has burnt their blood essence, so our recovery speed will be faster. If we continued to wear them down, then they will undoubtedly die. Burning their blood essence? Humph! Cold light flashed in the eyes of the Deep King Road Sovereign. With so many people, if they each took turns burning their blood essence, then they could drag things out for a long time. I do not want them to live this long. The Lord Demon God has ordered us to destroy them as soon as possible. If they can burn their blood essence, then so can we. Our 6 great totem-level sects have accumulated countless blood pills and heavenly materials for all these years. If it is only the Empyrean-level abyssals, then even if they burn their blood essence, we could still make up for their lost blood vitality. Good. Then there is no need to delay. Destroy them all. The abyssals began to eat up blood pills and restore their strength. Infernal energy gushed out from their bodies, soaring to the heavens. Killing intent seethed all around them. Even from far away and beneath the heaven and man array, the martial artists of the 33 heavens could still clearly feel this. The abyssals had used less than a day to restore themselves to their peak state. They had formed their battle array once more and wanted to tear the heaven and man array apart. This time, a good number of abyssals chose to burn their blood essence. Terrifying levels of energy began condensing in the horizon. The azure sea surged. The heavens trembled. A sneer appeared on the lips of the 4 upper true divinity abyssals. All of them were diabolically grinning. Lin Ming, no matter how outstanding your talent is, you will still die here. Wang. In the skies, the energies of over 8,000 abyssals gathered together, transforming into the phantom of a giant demon god. This demon god was like the ancestor god capable of destroying all of existence. It emitted a terrifying pressure, overlooking the world with disdain. What is that? On the side of the 33 heavens, many martial artists had just finished their meditation. As they looked at the giant demon god phenomenon swirling in the skies, all of them felt greatly suppressed. Even though they were separated by the heaven and man array, this demon god's aura still left them gasping for breath. Some of the 33 heavens martial artists with weaker cultivations paled, their palms dripping with sweat. This is a battle array, one even stronger than the last. If I'm not wrong, then this battle array is fused with runes of the demon god. The one who spoke was Ink. His sight and experience was naturally something that the martial artists of the 33 heavens couldn't compare with. Runes of the demon god? Emperor Sakya's heart chilled. They had heard the name demon god many times already. It seemed that this demon god was the founder of the demon god's tomb. It's just like Lin Ming adding his power of laws unto our bodies. Similarly, the abyssals can find higher-level runes to strengthen themselves. Things are going to become more difficult from here on out. Clear bitterly smiled. He realized that this battle would be more severe than first imagined. But no matter what runes were fused into the battle array of the demon army, this wasn't what the martial artists of the 33 heavens needed to care about. All they had to do was to fight with everything they had. Roar! The demon god roared. His cry shattered mountains and sundered rivers. It was like a boundless curtain of night came falling down, covering the defensive array of the 33 heavens martial artists inside. Kacha! The heaven and man array emitted a creaking sound from the immense burden. Cracks began to appear on the surface. This was strength capable of destroying a world. The closest several hundred Empyreans bore the brunt of this attack. Their bodies shook and they were sent flying away. In the terrifying impact, they were no different from tiny leaves in a storm, simply incapable of resisting. Even the true divinity-level June Blue Moon spat out a mouthful of blood that dyed his snow-white clothes red. Ah! As everyone drew back, screams emitted from the martial artists of the 33 heavens. Some people were unable to withstand the violent energy shockwaves that were released and exploded into pieces. Everyone watched helplessly as those who were just breathing a moment ago were torn to shreds. Within this energy storm, If one was able to maintain their protective shields, then they would be able to withstand it. But if one's protective shields were shattered, then one would immediately be ripped to pieces. This miserable way of death left everyone's scalps tingling with fear. The storm ravaged the world for a full incense stick of time before slowly subsiding. The Azure Sea had evaporated from the heat, and over 20 martial artists of the 33 heavens had died in the chaos. Many of them didn't even have skeletons remaining and were only a vague pile of blood and goo on the ground. This is too tragic. Those that died had all been overlords of the 33 heavens. Many of them had lived for millions of years already and were rulers of their own worlds. But in a war of this level, all of them were incomparably fragile. All that could be collected for burial were incomplete corpses. The hearts of the 33 heavens martial artists were filled with sadness and grief. However, no one stopped to mourn the dead. Without instruction from Divine Dream, they all began to sit down and meditate to restore their energies. What awaited them was an even more brutal battle. June Blue Moon, are you all right? Divine Dream worriedly inquired into June Blue Moon's wounds. Within the 33 heavens, there were only 28 true divinities left remaining. If Empyreans died then they wouldn't collapse, but every time one of the 28 true divinities died it would make the array formation lose a supporting corner, causing the pressure to be that much greater. I'm fine. June Blue Moon forced out a smile, indicating that he could still continue to fight. Clear took out a pill and fed it to June Blue Moon to help him recover as soon as possible. These wretches! In the distance, a pale great flood demon kingdom imperial scholar hatefully gnashed out. In that strike just now, he and the other upper true divinities had formed the foundation of the array formation and had consumed a tremendous amount of energy. Although they had struck open a crack in the heaven and man array, this crack wasn't enough to shatter the grand array. And as they watched, the array formation was clearly repairing itself. This left the many abyssals stunned. This array formation was far stronger than their initial expectations. Humph! Let's see just how long they can last. This was a protracted war of attrition. The Dark Abyss would launch an attack against the 33 heavens every day. Sometimes several of the 33 heavens martial artists would die, sometimes it would be around a dozen, and sometimes it would be in the dozens. Everyone had already become accustomed to their allies dying by their sides. After witnessing so much death all around them, these overlords of the 33 heavens were actually no longer afraid of dying. In truth, they valued their lives, but they feared the annihilation of their races even more. They feared that after their death their descendants would be taken in as slaves and even reared as beasts in pens, butchered whenever the abyssals wished. The fierce battle continued for another 12 days. The 33 heavens had lost around 300 Empyrean-level martial artists so far. 3 true divinities had been injured, of which June Blue Moon was the most severely wounded. This wasn't because June Blue Moon was weak. In fact, June Blue Moon's strength was outstanding amongst lower true divinities. However, because he had to withstand the direct frontal impact of the abyssal race's battle array, his injuries had superimposed on each other, causing him to suffer heavy losses. Even so, June Blue Moon didn't withdraw to the rear because the current situation didn't allow him to do so. After the 15th day, over 400 Empyreans had died on the side of the 33 heavens. To the heaven and man array, the 28 true divinities were the most important figures. They were the crux, the foundation of the array. But Empyreans were also important. When 1,800 Empyreans gathered together, the war strength they displayed was incredible. For this Empyrean-level war strength, if a few dozens died, then the losses were acceptable. But after hundreds died, it became clear that the defensive capabilities of the heaven and man array had weakened. With every attack, more and more large cracks formed, and these cracks also healed themselves at an increasingly slow pace. The 33 heavens martial artists could clearly feel the pressure rapidly increasing on them. It had to be known that, on the side of the Dark Abyss, they suffered nearly no losses. At most, some abyssals had burnt too much blood essence and temporarily drew back to restore themselves. In a situation where one side's overall strength was twice that of the other side, and in a situation where that side chose to use a continuous attack to wear down their enemy, the martial artists of the 33 heavens were finding themselves slowly unable to continue. And currently, Only half the amount of the required time that Lin Ming had spoken of had passed. Could they really last for a month? No one could guarantee this. Perhaps before a month passed, all the martial artists of the 33 heavens would have died in battle already. From the 16th day onwards, the abyssal's onslaught actually slowed down a little. But in this situation, Divine Dream and the other high-level figures of the 33 heavens didn't feel any sense of ease. Rather, their moods became increasingly dark and tense. They realized that this was likely the calm before the storm. The abyssals were gathering their energies for an even more terrifying attack. Divine Dream's speculations weren't wrong. The abyssals were indeed gathering their strength. And their next attack completely surpassed the expectations of the 33 heavens martial artists. After a quiet 3 days, it was the 18th day of the abyssal invasion. Winds began to suddenly surge. 10,000 miles high in the sky, the vault of the heavens was torn open and a space channel appeared from nowhere. Space channel. Seeing this, the martial artists of the 33 heavens all felt their hearts tighten. The demon god's tomb master's attack and the abyssal invasion had all been done through space channels. If this space channel suddenly appeared, then it was likely the work of the dark abyss. In other words, it was absolutely bad news. Are those reinforcements from the dark abyss? The current demon army has already forced us to the edge of the cliff. If more reinforcements come, then we're doomed. A blood-drenched martial artist of the 33 heavens said. No one doubted that if more reinforcements came rushing out from that space channel, then they wouldn't even be able to last until the 20th day. Roar! A heaven-shaking roar blasted out from the space channel. This was different from what the martial artists of the 33 heavens suspected. What passed through the space channel were not reinforcements of the abyssal army, but a massive demon head. This demon looked like a skull that was soaked in blood. Its entire body was bathed in deep purple flames, and it was over 1,000 miles tall. As it floated in the skies, it was like a hideous purple-red star. When this demon appeared, the martial artists of the 33 heavens suddenly felt a tremendous pressure push down upon them. It was like the world itself were falling down upon them, and even the heaven and man array was aroused because of this pressure. What is that thing? I have no idea. Seeing this abyssal appear, the martial artists of the 33 heavens were left in a frenzied panic. This monster was only a head. Could it be an abyssal? No matter what this thing was, what was true was that this demon head was their great enemy. Ink and Clear looked at the demon head in the skies, their complexions turning ugly. Do two seniors know what that is? Divine Dream's heart raced as she saw Ink and Clear's complexions. It was clear from their reactions that this demon head was incredibly formidable. If I'm not wrong, then that giant demon head is one of the 6 great totem abyssals, evil. Ink and Clear were subordinates of Azura and knew what the scene of the Great War from 10 billion years past had been like. These words shocked everyone. Evil? How is that possible? The 33 heavens martial artists now knew that Deep, Flood, and the Soul Emperor were all avatars of the demon god's tomb master. And in order to complete his seclusion, the demon god's tomb master had already fused together his 3 avatars. As for the other totem-level abyssals like Evil, Ian, Nether, and so forth, they had already died. 10 billion years ago, they had been struck down by the Azura Roadmaster and Immortal Sovereign. Evil indeed died, but a totem-level abyssal can be reborn. An abyssal can accept the abyssal ritual within the demon god's tomb to create a new totem-level abyssal. Ink and Clear's words caused despair to surge in the hearts of all those present. A totem-level abyssal was an existence only inferior to a beyond divinity powerhouse. This abyssal demon army had already pushed them to the limits of what they could withstand. If this evil that was stronger than all of them was added on, then the result could be imagined. They feared the heaven and man array might instantly explode. Lin Ming. Divine Dream bit her lips and gazed towards the direction where Lin Ming was in seclusion. She sighed and muttered to herself, "You have protected us so many times, and yet we cannot even manage to protect you once? Don't panic. This is indeed evil, but its strength might not be as high as you imagine. The 6 totem-level abyssals are born after passing through the test of the abyssal ritual, But in truth that is the strength of the demon god's tomb master. The demon god's tomb master divides a portion of his strength to seal into the bodies of these totem-level abyssals. But now, the demon god's tomb master is in seclusion and needs to condense as much strength as he can. It is unlikely that he was able to form the complete evil. Moreover, the evil before us has only grown in the last 10,000 some years. Its true strength should be far from being able to compare with a true totem-level abyssal. As Ink and Clear were speaking, evil was already launching its attack. Evil roared, its massive jaws opening and shooting out a beam of red divine light. This divine light fused together with the total strength of the Dark Abyss's demon army and came crashing down onto the Heaven and Man array. Pong! The Heaven and Man array fiercely trembled. The thick barrier of the array actually had a hole blown open in it. Waves of energy raged outwards. Dozens of 33 Heavens martial artists were swept into these waves and instantly disintegrated. This divine beam of light would soon tear open the great array formation propped up by the martial artists of the 33 Heavens. In this crucial moment, all 7 of the several strongest martial artists of the 33 Heavens, Divine Dream, Mo Evers Now, Ink, Clear, Lin Huang, Xiao Maxian, and Divine Mist, who had seized the body of the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, attacked together. Divine Dream led the counterattack and bore the brunt of the strike. She overdrew the strength of her divine soul to cut out with her sword. However, the strength that the Abyssals had been gathering for so long was incredibly potent. Divine Dream's chest was crushed inwards by the impact force. Her arms broke and she was sent tumbling backwards, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Mo Evers Now, Lin Huang, Xiao Maxian, Divine Mist, and the others could all feel an evil strength break into their bodies. This strength began to rapidly eat away at the vitality within their bodies as a deathly energy broke into their inner worlds. This icy cold sensation felt as if they were on the verge of death. Senior Divine Dream, Fairy Maiden G. Several people cried out in alarm. But at this time, who could worry about such things? Divine Dream held onto her chest and hurriedly said, "Repair the array formation. Fix it, no matter the cost." A hole had been torn in the Heaven and Man array, and at this time Abyssals had already broken in through the gap. Kill them! The 33 Heavens martial artists were enraged. They recklessly rushed towards the Abyssals. The 7 or 8 abyssal demons in the front were directly cut down by various law lights without even their bones left remaining. Divine Dream ignored her injuries to forcefully summon up her spirit essence. She opened the Divine Dream space and used this force field to cover the opening in the Heaven and Man array. For a time, a massive number of Abyssals were blocked out by the Divine Dream force field. As for those Abyssals who had already flown into the Heaven and Man array, they fell into stupors like flies that had lost their heads. They were caught in the illusions of the Divine Dream force field, unable to distinguish reality from illusion. With an overwhelming difference in numbers within the barrier, the Abyssals that rushed into the gap were quickly cut down and the Heaven and Man array was also slowly being restored. But at this time, no one could cheer over this. Divine Dream's complexion was pale white without even a hint of blood. She had been wounded again, and in any case it would be impossible for her to recover by the time the Abyssals attacked next. Even Xiao Maxian, Lin Huang, and the others were also left in poor conditions. Next time, just what would they use to block the attack of the Abyssals? Had their end finally arrived? The battle reached an unprecedented state of brutality. When the martial artists of the 33 Heavens desperately tried to kill off the Abyssals and repair the Heaven and Man array, 8 true divinity Abyssals recklessly rushed through the giant gap. These 8 Abyssals seemed unaffected by the Divine Dream space. Their eyes were blood red and their gazes like those of wild beasts. It seemed they had lost all wisdom and reasoning. "Be careful!" Xiao Maxian cried out in alarm. She could feel dark and evil fluctuations of energy within the 8 Abyssals. She had felt these fluctuations of energy before. This was the demon god's tomb master's world strength. Thinking of the manic, beast-like eyes of these 8 true divinities, Xiao Maxian realized that they were likely puppets controlled by the demon god's tomb master. They were just like Deep Child, filled with an absolutely unwavering faith and loyalty towards the demon god's tomb master, and completely unafraid of death. Just as Xianxia was about to warn everyone about these 8 abyssals that wouldn't fear death, something occurred that left everyone shuddering. Without a word, the 8 true divinity abyssals plunged towards the 28 true divinities of the 33 heavens and exploded without hesitation. 4 abyssals split apart, one each going towards the true divinities of the primal god race, saint race, human race, as well as the Azura road. But the 4 other abyssals hurtled towards Divine Dream. It was clear they could see that Divine Dream was the true leader of the 33 heavens and wanted to break down the pillar that held up the hearts of the 33 heavens martial artists. Senior Divine Dream. In that instant Xianxia, Mo Evers Now, and Lin Huang all rushed towards Divine Dream. However, the 4 true divinities exploding themselves happened too quickly. And with the speed of the explosive force and impact waves, it was simply impossible for Xianxia and the others to stop it. Bang! 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 The strength from a true divinity blowing themselves up was incredible. In particular, these true divinities were controlled by the Soul Emperor, so they committed suicide without a second thought, immediately burning away the entirety of their blood vitality and divine soul. Divine lights shot out. The true divinities of the 33 heavens were all drawn into the chaos of the explosion. Brother to Bague. On the side of the primal god race, Daiwahen's body cracked as the impact from the true divinity explosion struck him. And this was only because the primal god race martial artists had gathered together to block the true divinity explosion. Otherwise, Daiwahen would have likely suffered a grisly death by now. In terms of strength, Daiwahen was still weaker than the abyssal true divinity who had blown himself up. The saints were in an even worse state. Even with soaring feathers protection, the saint true divinities suffered tremendous losses. Astral Vault's chest was pierced through, and another newly promoted saint true divinity was directly torn apart because his foundation was too shallow. But the most miserable were Sovereign Heaven Union and Divine Void. They came from the Azura road and stood in a different camp from the true divinities of the 33 heavens. Here, the different true divinities all stood together on their own sides. When the 8 true divinity abyssals blew themselves up, the true divinities of each camp had joined together to resist the explosion. But Sovereign Heaven Union and Divine Void had only the 2 of them, and their strengths were also amongst the weakest. Moreover, they were both weaker than the abyssal true divinity who had blown up. Now, as the 2 of them were sucked into the explosion, they both released miserable cries as their mortal bodies were ripped apart and their divine souls were sundered. But at this moment, no one had time to pay attention to the dead Sovereign Heaven Union and Divine Void. They were all worried about Divine Dream. Divine Dream bore the brunt of the attack, forced to face off against the strength from 4 abyssal true divinities blowing themselves up. Mo Evers Now and the others were only able to block a little bit of the energy for Divine Dream. The rest had to be withstood by her. The Divine Dream space shattered and Divine Dream's body was stained wet with blood. She was sent flying away like a butterfly with broken wings. Senior Divine Dream. Xianxia rushed forwards to catch Divine Dream, her eyes filled with worry and anxiousness. In this war, Divine Dream was their central pillar. If something happened to her, then morale would plummet. Divine Dream had wounds upon wounds. Her face was pale like funeral paper and blood flowed out from her mouth and ears. Her spiritual sea has been torn and she overdrew her life. It will be impossible for her to restore her combat strength in a short period of time. Ink could make out Divine Dream's current state from a glance. As he did, his heart sank even deeper. Divine Dream was the pillar of the 33 heavens. If Divine Dream fell, how could they continue fighting this war? Now, there was still 10 days left. A powerful ally had appeared on the side of the abyssals, and as for themselves, they had suffered severe losses. Things had become completely disproportionate now, and it was likely they couldn't even last another day. Lin Ming, please hurry. Xianxia bit her lips as she glanced at where Lin Ming was in seclusion. She knew that Lin Ming must have entered the most critical period of his seclusion. If he were to be interrupted at this time, then all his previous efforts would end in vain. Lin Huang and Jur flew forwards and grabbed hold of Xiao Moxian's hand. Lin Ming was their final hope. The reason they persisted until now was all in order to allow him to complete his seclusion. But the longer this continued, the more difficult it became. There was still 10 days remaining. In the lifespan of a true divinity, 10 days was not even a flicker of time. But now these 10 days had become an impassable moat, a distant goal that seemed unattainable. Perhaps they would really die here. But if she could die with Lin Ming, then that didn't seem like something difficult to accept. Xiao Moxian humorlessly smiled. And at this time, the martial artists of the 33 heavens were processing the corpses of Divine Void, Sovereign Heaven Union, and the newly promoted Saint True Divinity. 3 true divinities had perished and Divine Dream had been grievously wounded. Without a doubt, this was a calamitous turn of events for the 33 heavens martial artists. Divine Void Seeing Divine Void die here, Empyrean Divine Mist was filled with a deep and strange emotion. Divine Void was Divine Mist's sworn enemy. Divine Mist had wanted to burn Divine Void's bones to ashes and refine his soul. But today Divine Void had died and Divine Mist could only feel a sense of grief, completely unable to summon any joyful thoughts. Divine Void was not a good person. In fact, he was a thankless person who forgot graces and held no virtues. He was extremely selfish and cruel, but today he had died in battle for the 33 heavens. This wasn't what he wanted. Divine Void wasn't someone with such noble thoughts, but instead was forced to because he had no choice. In the current 33 heavens, whether someone walked the righteous path, whether they walked the demonic path, whether or not they had committed countless sins or had taken countless innocent lives, everyone was forced to lay down their pasts and fight for their continued survival. This was because there was no path to escape left for anyone anymore. The heaven and man array fell into a deathly silence. The atmosphere was filled with an unprecedented level of tenseness. Is there nothing else we can do? Divine Dream weakly said as she swallowed a pill. She wryly shook her head. In front of her, the armies of the dark abyss were gathering once more. Just now, they had lost 8 true divinity abyssals in a single breath. But to them, this loss wasn't anything at all because they still had over 50 true divinities in their ranks. Moreover, the 4 upper true divinities and evil remained uninjured. They just needed around a single day to fully restore themselves. That moment would be the end of times for the 33 heavens. Perhaps, there might be a way. At this time, Clear suddenly spoke up, his voice grim and sad. But his words actually caused everyone's hearts to shake. What can we do? Everyone's eyes began to shine. Common logic indicated that they had all fallen into a hopelessly dire situation without any chance of survival. But the one who spoke was Clear, a guardian of the Azura Road. When people were in desperate straits, it was always easy for them to accept a slim chance of hope, no matter how uncertain that hope was. If there was a chance to live, just who would willingly accept death? Yin Yang Despair Valley, Forsaken Mortal Tomb. Yin Yang Despair Valley, Forsaken Mortal Tomb. Clear and Ink slowly glanced at each other. Most of the 33 heavens martial artists had never heard of Yin Yang Despair Valley, Forsaken Mortal Tomb, so they didn't know what Clear and Ink were speaking about. But Xiao Moxian actually felt her heart shake. That place. The others didn't know about Yin Yang Despair Valley and the Forsaken Mortal Tomb, but Xiao Moxian was someone who had personally gone there. In the past, during Lin Ming's first venture into the Azura Road, he was still at the Divine Lord Realm. He accidentally encountered Xiao Moxian in the Great Desolate, and the two of them experienced dangers and tribulations before finally uniting together in tragic Death Valley. After they killed Tian Mingzi, they went to the inner Azura Road. At the Azura Road's Divine Rune City, Lin Ming attended its great auction, and with the massive amount of wealth he accumulated, he purchased the Jade Dragon's Horn, Heaven-Devouring Snake Gallbladder, Dragon Saliva Grass, and other such precious materials. And these materials were all needed to refine a pill, one called the Ravenous Wolf Heaven Pill. This was a pill recorded in the Celestial Tyrant Manual and used to open the Heavenly Retribution Tao Palace. But at the time, the link between humanity and the 9 stars of the Tao Palace had been blocked by famine. If Lin Ming wanted to break into the next Dao Palace, it wouldn't be easy. And in order to refine the ravenous wolf heaven pill, he needed an ominous land. The place Lin Ming chose was Yang Despair Valley, forsaken mortal tomb. This was a land that Lin Ming learned about by paying a great price to Heaven's secret pavilion. Afterwards, the ravenous wolf heaven pill was smoothly refined, and Lin Ming also spent a good deal of time cultivating within the forsaken mortal tomb. And all the strange sights that Xiao Moxian saw in the forsaken mortal tomb left a deep impression on her. First of all, the outside of Yang Despair Valley was protected by the coiling ridge giants. She and Lin Ming spent a great deal of effort to enter that secret land. And all there was within the forsaken mortal tomb were incomparably giant black turtles, each as large as a mountain. These black turtles seemed to have died, leaving nothing behind but their massive carapaces. And on the back of each carapace was an ancient coffin that reached into the skies. From these coffins, one could tell that the forsaken mortal tomb was a true tomb. But as for who these forsaken mortals were, Xiao Moxian had no idea. There were many rumors concerning the forsaken mortal tomb. One of these rumors was that the forsaken mortals were actually giant servants who had once followed the Azura Roadmaster to war, but no one could confirm the veracity of these claims. Today, hearing Ink and Clear's words, Xiao Moxian suddenly recalled what she had experienced with Lin Ming. Are those buried in the forsaken mortal tomb warriors that once fought for the Azura Roadmaster? Xiao Moxian suddenly asked. Everyone turned towards her in surprise. Ink and Clear nodded. Yes, to be more accurate, they were overlords of the ancient races from 10 billion years past. When their life neared its end, or perhaps when they were severely wounded, the master would bind their bodies and souls using an arcane technique, turning them into puppets and sealing them away in the forsaken mortal tomb using an array formation. In truth, these people have already died, but they can be awakened to fight just like puppets. They do not know pain, they do not fear death, and they don't even realize that their boundary has dropped a great deal from what it was when they were alive. As Ink and Clear spoke, everyone was shaken by their words. What kinds of arcane technique was this that a corpse puppet could be preserved for 10 billion years? 10 billion years ago, innumerable overlords of the ancient races died in the Great War, but they also knew that the Abyssals would eventually stage a return. When they knew that death approached, many of these ancient race overlords were willingly turned into corpse puppets by the Master so that they could span the boundless river of time and fight once more. After they are awakened, their life can be maintained for around 3 days, but too long a time has passed. In order to awaken them, one needs not just the Azura Heavenly Tao, but also a tremendous amount of life energy. If the Master was still here, then it would be fine, but currently the Master's situation isn't too good, and it could even be said that his life or death is unknown. If it were us two old men trying to awaken them, then that would be too difficult. These were corpses that had been sleeping for 10 billion years. If one wished to suddenly awaken them, it was normal if it required a massive amount of life energy. But the martial artists of the 33 heavens could make out a different meaning behind Ink and Clear's words. Difficult? Are you saying that it is possible? Someone asked, excitement rising in his voice. If those slumbering ancient race overlords could be awoken, then it would be a powerful boost for their side. Yes, it is indeed possible. But to awaken those ancient race overlords, it will require at least 1 middle true divinity, 2 lower true divinities, and 50 some Empyreans to work together with us. And all these people will need to sacrifice their source of life. In other words, by using the secret Azura arts, the life force of these people can be transferred to the corpses of these ancient race overlords, exchanging their lives for 3 days of life for these corpses, meaning that those who work with us will die. As Ink and Clear spoke, everyone's hearts shivered. Die! 3 true divinities and 50 some Empyreans needed to sacrifice their lives to exchange for 3 days of awakening for these ancient race overlords. In fact, everyone faintly realized that if those who helped awaken these corpses would die, then perhaps Clear and Ink would pay an unimaginably high price. Ink and Clear sighed. The 33 heavens martial artists were all masters of their own worlds. If they managed to survive this war, then they would all become heroes of the 33 heavens and would be able to comfortably live out the remaining years of their lives in peace and prosperity. Martial artists at the Empyrean realm and above were revered and worshipped by countless people. Whatever they wanted, they would have. They possessed great authority and an extremely high status. Such a life was naturally incredibly wonderful. But once one volunteered, that would mean certain death without any chance of survival. No one wanted to die. Ink and Clear also wouldn't force anyone. The crowd was silent for 10 breaths of time. Then, a voice called out, "I am willing to volunteer." Everyone turned and saw that the one speaking was a middle-aged man in white robes. His hands were casually held behind his back and his expression was calm. He was Empyrean Vast Universe. Empyrean Vast Universe was an ordinary human Empyrean. Relative to all the blindingly amazing geniuses around him, he didn't show much talent. He cultivated for a long time and only managed to reach the Middle Empyrean realm. Even after he entered the Azura Road and was able to draw upon all of its accumulated resources, his cultivation only neared the peak Empyrean realm. Compared to a true divinity, there was still a giant moat separating them. And this moat was a gap he would never be able to overcome in his life. Amongst the many masters of the 33 heavens, Vast Universe seemed common, so common that most people subconsciously forgot about him. But today he was the first one to stand up. As everyone was lost in their thoughts, Vast Universe carefully straightened out his blood-stained white robes. His eyes moved through the crowd before eventually falling on Divine Dream. Looking at the blood-drenched and pale Divine Dream, Vast Universe had a complex look in his eyes. Finally he smiled, and his smile was incomparably pure. A middle-aged man had the simple and pure smile of a youth. For all this time, Vast Universe had always been watching this woman, and had always been watching as she drifted further and further away from him. Although he could only see her back, he had never looked away. Vast Universe! At this moment, Divine Dream felt as if her heart had been stabbed with a knife. So many years had passed, and yet all those years became vague. Vast Universe had never revealed anything to her, but Divine Dream had always faintly sensed his feelings towards her. But her feelings towards Vast Universe were never more than those of purely a good friend. "I originally thought that I would be able to silently look at you. Until the end of my life, for so many years I haven't been able to help you in any way. But now I can finally show some use. From now on, take care of yourself. The burden on your shoulders is too heavy and your life has been too lonely. If possible, find someone to accompany you and walk together with you." Vast Universe spoke these words to Divine Dream with a sound transmission. 2 clear streaks of tears began to silently flow down Divine Dream's cheeks. The desire to protect, that wasn't something which needed words. Divine Dream opened her mouth to speak, but eventually she couldn't utter a single syllable. After Vast Universe spoke, Skyrend Godlord stood up too. "This old man is also willing to join in." Skyrend Godlord had already lived for over 80 million years. He hadn't been able to break through to true divinity in the Azura Road and didn't have much of his lifespan remaining. "I have lived well for a good number of years. To die on the battlefield is always far better than passing away," Skyrend Godlord valiantly said. "Then let me be the third." A Spiritas Empyrean stood up. Most people didn't even know his name. "As well as I. I was saved from the Dark Abyss by Lord Lin Ming, and my life belongs to our leader as well as Lord Lin Ming." A female ancient race Empyrean spoke up. She was from the Dark Abyss and had been saved when Lin Ming rescued the slaves from the Demon Association's slave market at Black Sand City. Ever since then, she had joined Mo Eversnow's ancient rebel army. Lin Ming had long since forgotten her, but she would never forget the scene where Lin Ming bought her from Black Sand City. To her, Lin Ming was her great benefactor. Just like Vast Universe who watched Divine Dream's back, she was also willing to silently watch Lin Ming from behind. "I also volunteer. Count me in." "Me too." "Oh." Empyrean after Empyrean stood up, their voices calm and peaceful. There was no need to speak words of bravery and sacrifice, and yet their voices left a great impact on all who heard them. Ink and Clear took a deep breath, their hearts and minds tumbling up and down. "This is enough. 50 Empyreans is sufficient." Then, We still need 3 true divinities. 1 middle true divinity and 2 lower true divinities. Even if the ancient race overlords within the forsaken mortal tomb were awoken, it would be impossible to annihilate the abyssal army. The martial artists of the 33 heavens would still have to fight. Thus, it was impossible to sacrifice upper true divinities. 1 middle true divinity was already the limit. Just as Ink and Clear's voices fell, Lin Huang stood up. But before he could take several steps forwards, a hand reached out to drag him back. "What are you doing?" An old voice spoke up. It was Empyrean Divine Mist. "Your father has already done so much for the 33 heavens. Do you want us to let his son die too?" Without a second thought, Divine Mist stood up. He walked in front of Ink and Clear and said, "Then let me go. There is no one here more appropriate than I." Divine Mist had seized the good fortune Saint Sovereign's body, and his cultivation had fallen to the middle true divinity realm. Moreover, because his soul was weaker than the mortal body he possessed, it was impossible for Divine Mist to perfectly display the strength of the good fortune Saint Sovereign's body. His cultivation would never rise in the future. Just now, Divine Void had died. Divine Mist had watched Divine Void's death with his own eyes, but no sense of joy or relief filled him. Rather, his heart felt hollow instead. Perhaps he had already laid down his vengeance and hatred. Divine Mist's sect and family no longer existed, and for his wisp of remnant soul to survival until this time, Divine Mist had a faint feeling that the heavens had allowed his life to continue also that he could meet Lin Ming. Those lonely years within tragic Death Valley had caused all mortal desires and wants to pale in Divine Mist's eyes. And especially now, he no longer had any more worries. The destiny of samsara, the glories of life and death, everything was but fleeting mist before the eyes. If that was the case, then to die on the battlefield might be a way to return. Senior Divine Mist. Lin Huang wanted to say something, but Ink and Clear seemed to have already tacitly approved of Divine Mist. "We still need 2 more people, 2 lower true divinities." Daiwahen stood up. He had already carefully considered this issue. Because of the explosions from those true divinity abyssals, he had been severely wounded and hadn't yet recovered. "Allow me to volunteer. My body is wounded, but my source of life is not." Daiwahen was a part of the 33 heavens primal god race bloodline. If it weren't for Lin Ming, then the primal god race's bloodline would have long since been destroyed. Daiwahen had always felt grateful to Lin Ming for this, and now was the time to repay this gratitude. Although he was paying this gratitude back to Lin Ming, the truth was that he was also fighting for himself. Senior Daiwahen. As Daiwahen volunteered himself, many of those on the side of the primal god race couldn't bear to lose him. Daiwahen was their patriarch. 20,000 years ago, the primal god race had been invaded by the good fortune Saint Sovereign, and the old patriarch had died in battle. Afterwards, Daiwahen had been left in charge of managing all matters concerning the primal god race, becoming the new patriarch. He had silently held this position for 20,000 years. In the face of his race's extinction, as they stood upon the raging winds and waves, there was no joy and beauty in the position of patriarch. Rather, to carry this title meant heavy responsibility and immense pressure. Ink and Clear looked at Daiwahen and sighed inwardly. The Azura Roadmaster had been of the primal god race in the past, and yet that incomparably powerful primal god race had fallen to such a degree. Good. Then, we still require 1 more person. As Clear swept his eyes over the other true divinities, a white-clothed youth quietly stood up. "Then it should be me." This calm and indifferent voice caused everyone's hearts to shake. June Blue Moon? Everyone was shocked. If one stood out to volunteer with Ink and Clear, then death was certain. Those who chose to step forwards were mostly from the older generation. The younger generation still had glorious times awaiting them. For instance, if June Blue Moon were to walk further, he could become a middle true divinity. Even an upper true divinity was within the realm of possibility. To die like was too great a pity. Child, don't be so impulsive. Ink wasn't cruel enough to sacrifice June Blue Moon here. He had many higher achievements he could reach. June Blue Moon faintly smiled. My wounds are heavy and I don't have much combat strength left remaining. I won't be able to play much of a role in the future fights to come. In the previous battle, June Bluemoon had been wounded twice and his injuries were heavy. Although he was severely wounded, his source of life remained uninjured. Like that, it wouldn't be difficult for him to join forces with Ink and Clear to activate the Great Array. Clear and Ink were speechless. They could stop June Bluemoon, but who would sacrifice themselves in his place? It would be a pity if June Bluemoon were to die here, but for anyone else, all they had was their life. If they died, then they would have nothing at all. They had no right to force anyone to do anything, so the two of them simply didn't try to discourage June Bluemoon anymore. Clear shook his head. Since this is the decision you have made, I will say no more. The required people have already been gathered. Everyone can have 2 hours to meditate as well as bid their farewells. Ink and Clear sighed as they spoke. The Empyreans and true divinities of the 33 heavens had cultivated for 10,000 years together. In addition to the time enchantment, they knew each other for much longer. It was inevitable that people would form friendships, and if there would be those that died, then there would surely be matters to settle beforehand. Daiwahen called the people of the primal god race to his side and began to state what should happen after his death, as well as including who would be the next candidate for the position of patriarch. His tone was gentle, as if he were simply saying goodbye before leaving for a long trip. Many primal god race martial artists sat in deep worship and veneration, and some martial artists quietly shed tears. Vast Universe quietly accompanied Divine Dream. The two of them were silent as they passed their final 2 hours before they would never see each other again together. Vast Universe looked at Divine Dream's silhouette, saw the black hair hanging down her forehead. This would be the last time he saw Divine Dream. From the Spiritas, an Upper Empyrean passed a jade slip containing all his lifetime of studies to his friend. He bid his friend to keep living and seek out a descendant for him that could continue his legacy. From the Saints, a tall and handsome Empyrean bid his farewells to his wife. His wife was only at the World King boundary and simply didn't have the qualifications to participate in the battle. She could only throw herself into her husband's chest and weep tears of sorrow. From the human race, an Empyrean took out a child that was still swaddled in cloth from her spatial ring. Then, she carefully passed this baby to her friend who had grown with her since childhood and asked her to take good care of her child. Although she passed her child to her friend, this Empyrean still seemed reluctant to let go of the sleeping baby's hand. As she looked at the sleeping baby, her eyes were filled with love and attachment. In various areas, similar scenes were occurring all over. As for June Bluemoon, he quietly stood in a corner by himself, withstanding the loneliness and solitude. In his arms, there was a white and cute little bunny. June Bluemoon stroked the soft and chubby bunny again and again. The small bunny enjoyed this, but it seemed to understand something and then look up at June Bluemoon with sadness. Xianxia quietly looked at June Bluemoon. She thought that he was a particularly peculiar character. Over 20,000 years ago at the Divine Realm First Martial Meeting, that was the first time Xianxia met June Bluemoon and also the first time she met Lin Ming. At that time, the Divine Realm First Martial Meeting was basically equivalent to a stage for all Empyrean descendants. Empyrean descendants basically occupied all top 10 spots, and it was already a lifetime's worth of honor if a great World King disciple was able to break into the top 50. As for martial artists from the common people, there were nearly none of them as it was difficult for them to even pass the preliminaries. However, in such a first martial meeting with countless peerless masters and rival geniuses, there were actually 2 martial artists from the common people that were able to rush into the finals and enter the top 10. One was Lin Ming and the other was June Bluemoon. Like Lin Ming, June Bluemoon had ascended from the lower realms. On the side of the first martial meeting, he had always been holding onto the furry white bunny and gently stroking it, completely indifferent to all around him. This little bunny had left a deep impression on Xianxia. June Bluemoon was dressed in white, completely looking like a scholarly youth lost in thought. If this were the mortal world, then there wouldn't be anyone who thought he was a martial artist from first glance, but would instead think he was some weak and fragile scholar that was preparing to study in imperial examinations. He had always been silent and collected, and if one were to describe him, it would be jade-like gentleman. Afterwards, June Blue Moon became a world king, Empyrean, and then stepped into true divinity, become one of the supreme masters of humanity. Even so, his disposition remained the same as before, without the least bit of arrogance around him. He joined Mount Padala, becoming a lay disciple. He stood indifferent to worldly sins, approaching Buddha with all his heart. Many of those in the younger generation had broad social circles. Even Dragon Fong had his own friends and had even accepted disciples and married his wife. But June Blue Moon remained a single bachelor his entire life, and he remained untouched by the attraction towards feminine sexuality. Like this, he lived alone. He seemed to be accustomed to bearing this loneliness, like a sword sealed away in the box. The feeling he gave off was always a simple one, that was completely unpretentious. For a full hour, June Blue Moon continued petting the small bunny in his chest, not speaking a single word. As the final moments approached, he stood up and looked towards Xiao Moxian. "Fairy G, please help me take care of it." June Blue Moon passed the small bunny to Xiao Moxian. Then, he took out his sword from his spatial ring and passed it to Xiao Moxian. "This bunny." As Xiao Moxian received the small white bunny, she held it close to her chest, puzzled. In truth, she had always been confused. Just why did June Blue Moon bring this small white bunny everywhere with him? She subconsciously stroked the little white bunny. As she did so, her energies came into contact with the small white bunny, and then her heart shook. This bunny, she could faintly feel that sealed within this bunny was an extremely weak wisp of remnant soul. If she carefully probed, she could feel that this was the remnant soul of a woman. In other words, what she hugged in her chest was simply not a little bunny, but the incarnation of a woman. Realizing this incredible point, Xiao Moxian looked at June Blue Moon, unable to find the words to say, "She is your." As Xiao Moxian looked at June Blue Moon, she seemed to suddenly understand many things. June Blue Moon gently traced the little bunny's head and softly said, "Fairy G, if there is a day when Sir Lin can wield the heavenly Tao and even reverse the cycle of life and death, then I ask you to request Sir Lin to give her a good life. This is my final wish with me alone. I would forever be unable to revive her. But if it is Sir Lin, there might be a slim hope." "Just who is she?" Xiao Moxian sucked in a deep breath. The her that June Blue Moon referred to was naturally the incomparably weak wisp of remnant soul sealed within the bunny. Xiao Moxian didn't know just what June Blue Moon's story was. But without a doubt, June Blue Moon's unwavering certainty in stepping forwards was likely related to this mysterious woman's incarnation. Since he felt that he couldn't rescue this mysterious woman, then he hoped that once Lin Ming stepped beyond divinity, he would be able to reverse life and death and revive her. Xiao Moxian was shocked by all of these realizations. June Blue Moon faintly smiled. Without much else, he only said, "If that isn't possible, then please bury her and I together." Then, June Blue Moon turned and walked towards Clear and Ink. Wait a moment." Xiao Moxian stepped forwards and grabbed onto June Blue Moon as well as Clear and Ink. "Seniors, is there really no other means? Will those that join together with you truly die? If I also help, if more people help, can we share the burden and preserve their lives? Even just a little bit would be good." Preserve their lives? Ink and Clear looked at Xiao Moxian and sighed. "I fear that is too difficult. The great array sucks in one source of life. If it is all drawn away, then a person will die. Even if a little bit of their life source is left over, they will slowly fade away because too much has been taken. If several more people come, that only means there will be several more victims. And if more people sacrifice themselves, then just who will fight in the following battles?" Ink and Clear would work together to summon the ancient overlords that lived 10 billion years ago. But even if their summoning was successful, they wouldn't be able to kill off all the abyssals. In the battles to follow, they still needed everyone to work together, and it wouldn't be an easy task at all. If too many people died here, how could they possibly continue fighting the abyssal demons? "I understand," Xiao Moxian said, her voice bitter. Lin Ming had lost his source soul force in the past, and had only managed to slowly restore it through countless tribulations and lucky chances. But these tribulations and lucky chances might not necessarily be able to be replicated by others. Are you prepared? Ink and Clear looked towards the many Empyreans and true divinities. Their expressions showed that they were already prepared for anything. Then let us begin. As Ink and Clear spoke, runes began to ripple out beneath their feet. Oh! Even though Lin Ming was deep in seclusion, he was still keenly aware of everything that was occurring outside. His seclusion had entered its final and also its most crucial stage. In order to increase the rate of fusion as much as possible, Lin Ming had already become recklessly desperate. Because of the powerful impacts of energy against his body, his muscles had torn and his hair had scattered. He looked just like a Rakshasa that had crawled up from the pits of hell. Faster! Just a little bit faster! Lin Ming shouted, burning with impatience. That month he spoke of was only an approximation. Currently, he was doing everything to hasten his cultivation and hopefully reduce this time. Ever since the Azura Roadmaster blocked the final strike of the Demon God's Tomb Master, he had fallen into a deep silence. Lin Ming didn't know what happened to the Azura Roadmaster, nor could he care about it right now. He only knew that he had to complete his seclusion as fast as possible, otherwise everyone outside would die. His family, his friends, his wives, even all those fellow comrades of the 33 heavens who were fighting that gruesome battle up above. He could not allow these people to die. If he were the only one left alive, then what would be the point of all this? Little Black, give me your strength. In front of Lin Ming, there was a black dragon that had already shrunk itself to the size of a tiger. Originally, Lin Ming's seclusion required 10,000 years. In order to shorten the time needed, Lin Ming had summoned Little Black to the Amethyst Heavenly Palace. Little Black shared the same roots with Lin Ming, and the energies within Little Black were also inherited from Lin Ming. Between the man and dragon, their energies were completely intertwined. Thus, for these past years, Little Black had been absorbing energy within the Amethyst Heavenly Palace and then using itself as the medium to transfer this energy to Lin Ming. If Lin Ming were to absorb energy by himself, it would naturally be somewhat slow. But with man and dragon working in tandem, even if Little Black absorbed energy at a rate far slower than Lin Ming, it would still hasten Lin Ming's speed. Everything was supposed to happen along a prescribed and orderly path, but now Lin Ming had become desperate. He reached out a hand and pressed it against Little Black's chest. His fingers nearly dug into Little Black's flesh and blood. Bang! The energy within Little Black seemed to explode. Powerful energy flowed out with blood from Little Black's chest, gushing towards Lin Ming like a dam that had burst open. Oh! Little Black emitted a low growl of pain. This crazy and wild outpour of energy nearly caused its body to blow up. But Little Black knew that Lin Ming had entered the most critical period of his seclusion. Let alone pain. Even if Little Black were to die here and turn into a mass of flesh and blood on the floor, it would still persist until his final breath to help Lin Ming complete his cultivation. Little Black, bear with me. Seeing Little Black's appearance, Lin Ming's heart was pained. But at this time, just what was pain? Energy wildly broke into Lin Ming's body. Within this independent world, a powerful attraction force erupted from him, causing the world's strength all around him to form a great vortex. And the center of this vortex was Lin Ming. In this brutal impact of energy, the pain that Lin Ming withstood was no less than Little Black's. His skin and blood vessels began to crack open, as if his body would implode at any moment. If this were a normal martial artist, they would have long since been too scared to continue and would have done everything in their power to stop their cultivation, lest their body explode. But Lin Ming crazily absorbed energy. He only hated that he couldn't absorb even more energy at an even faster pace. Almost, just a little bit more. Fuse! Lin Ming roared out in his heart. His comprehension of laws was high enough, but in order to completely fuse these two great worlds together, what he required was a massive amount of energy. This energy boiled together, brewing towards the peak of possibility. At this time in the world outside, the earth began to shake. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Mountains toppled over and rivers collapsed. In the nearly dried-up Azura Sea, massive cracks began to appear in the seabed. These cracks were fathomless, as if the entire Azura road would be torn apart. The martial artists of the 33 heavens naturally noticed the changes occurring to the Azura road. Could this world-breaking scene be related to Lin Ming? Xiao Moxian's breath quickened. She looked towards the place where Lin Ming was in seclusion, her eyes unblinking. She prayed in her heart that Lin Ming could pass this final hurdle and leave seclusion. However, high in the air, the Abyssals also saw these changes. They decided to push forwards regardless of the cost. Is this all because of that brat Lin Ming? I don't know, but it doesn't matter what it is. We must attack now to prevent any future nightmares. In the brief battle just now, the Abyssals had consumed a great deal of strength. Their original plan was to recuperate a bit before attacking again, but now they couldn't attend to such things. The Great Flood Demon Kingdom's Imperial Scholar crushed a token in his hand. The instant this token crumbled, the eyes of dozens of higher Abyssals suddenly turned blood red, just like those 8 true divinities that had blown themselves up. They were also completely controlled by the Demon God's Tomb Master. During this raid to kill Lin Ming, the Demon God's Tomb Master had done everything in his power to ensure the mission would go smoothly. He had sent over 100 loyal servants here, including 10 true divinities and dozens of Empyreans. And now, these servants had lost their ability to act and were then swallowed up by evil. Dozens of Empyrean-level Abyssals were swallowed up by evil. Seeing this scene, Ink and Clear didn't dare to delay any further. They didn't know if the changes occurring within the Azura Road were related to Lin Ming or not. If they were, then it might mean Lin Ming had entered the most critical period of his seclusion, and they would have to prevent these Abyssals from disturbing Lin Ming no matter the cost. Begin! Ink and Clear shouted out in unison. There burned all the energy within their bodies, and their life source and blood essence seethed within them. Around Ink and Clear, the 50 Empyreans and 3 true divinities also offered their life energies without hesitation. They could all feel their strength rapidly fading away, but the power of life that gathered became increasingly intense. The sky seemed to droop downwards, filled with divine light, and the earth was cracked open. The seas had dried up and the entire Azura Road seemed on the verge of destruction, as if the end of times had arrived. Ink and Clear gathered the many martial artists of the 33 heavens into an array formation, gathering their boundless life energy and combusting it like a blinding sun. Beams of multi-hued light flew out from the array formation, crossing through the skies like rainbows as they flew deep into the Great Desolate. At the Great Desolate's Red Moon Canyon, the forsaken mortal tomb that had been sealed for 10 billion years was split open. Giant bronze coffins opened and ancient god-kings flew out from their resting place. These god-kings had already slept for countless years. They had long since lost their wisdom, lost all memories. All they remembered was to slaughter and kill atop the blood-drenched battlefield. Before their death, they had withstood excruciating pain to be made into corpse puppets and sealed away into deep slumber for innumerable years. And all of that was for this one moment. They were people that should already have died. Now, with Ink and Clear utilizing a grand array formation to awaken them, their lives could only be maintained for a short 3 days. But these 3 days were already enough. Roars spread out like a tide, breaking through the universe. Hundreds of ancient god-kings savagely burst into the ranks of the Abyssal army. These ancient god-kings had all been true divinities before their death. After dying, they were made into puppets and sealed away for 10 billion years, causing their cultivations to plummet precipitously. Even so, the worst amongst them had strength equal to an upper Empyrean. Among them were powerhouses that possessed the combat strength of lower and middle true divinities. What? This is. Seeing this crowd of ancient god-kings rush towards them, the Abyssals were shocked. They had no idea where these reinforcements had come from. These ancient god-kings of the 33 heavens were already withered and dried up, as thin as firewood. Their corpses were wrapped in chains, and they held rusty and stained weapons that had lost their luster. Some of them even rode on skeletal mounts, like a legion of the undead that poured forth from hell. Roar! The undead army of ancient god-kings brutally collided with the Abyssals. One of the ancient god kings leading their force grasped a large flag and plunged it into the head of evil. Kacha! Bones shattered. Evil was enraged. It glared at this ancient god king who appeared in front of it. Although this ancient god king had a thin and withered body, one could still vaguely make out the outlines of his face and his once youthful and handsome appearance. When this ancient god king died, he had likely been extremely young. 10 billion years ago he must have been majestic and glorious, a shining jewel amongst the primal god race, one of their indomitably proud and peerlessly arrogant elites. Even after being made into a puppet, even after death, even after being sealed away for 10 billion years, he still retained the strength of a middle true divinity. It was hard to imagine just how powerful he must have been in the past. Evil opened its great maw to swallow up this ancient elite warrior. But, just before evil could swallow this ancient elite genius, the ancient elite genius revolved the energy within him without hesitation and exploded. Bang! Divine light soared through the heavens. Evil cried out in pain and its massive body was sent tumbling backwards. Its maw was filled with blood and its chin had nearly been torn off. Kill them! Kill them all! The great flood demon kingdom imperial scholar was incensed. This undead army fought without any fear of death. As for them, they had already consumed a great deal of strength because of their continuous battle with the 33 heavens. Before they could fully restore themselves, the army of ancient elites had come hurtling towards them. Just be destroyed. The great flood demon kingdom imperial scholar slammed out his palm, completely crushing two ancient elites, ripping apart their meridians and shattering all their organs. However, the moment before they died, they exploded their bodies without hesitation. The great flood demon kingdom imperial scholar was able to rely on his profound cultivation to avoid the explosion of those two ancient elites, but the 7 or 8 Empyrean abyssals around him weren't so lucky. They were directly sucked into the vortex of energy where they suffered gruesome deaths. Damn it! The high-level figures within the abyssal army were infuriated. Because they had been caught off guard and also because they had used up too much energy, they simply didn't have enough time to form a battle array before the ancient god kings of the 33 heavens broke into their ranks. These ancient god kings completely lacked any concept of death. Once they realized they were soon about to die, they would grab onto the nearest abyssal and blow themselves up. Their reckless method of fighting caused the abyssals to suffer heavy losses. Withdraw! Tighten up the formation! Deep King Rhodes' sovereign yelled. The demon army was too scattered, and this allowed the ancient army of god kings to utilize their suicidal attacks to the maximum effect. But once they could shrink back and recognize their formation, then their losses could be minimized. The disparity was still a disparity. Even though army of ancient elites didn't fear death, the strongest amongst them still had the strength of 6 or 7 middle true divinities, and the rest of them had the strength of lower true divinities and Empyreans. They were still far short of being able to compare with the abyssal army. With the direction of the high-level abyssals, the demon army started to retreat as they fought. More and more ancient elites of the 33 heavens were killed, and because of the increasing distance, they couldn't cause much damage even if they blew themselves up. This is bad. Seeing the battle situation in the distance, the martial artists within the heaven and man array frowned. If this continued, then it wouldn't be 2 hours before all those ancient elites were destroyed. At that time, the abyssal army would simply meditate and restore themselves for some time before restarting their attack against the heaven and man array. After that, what awaited the 33 heavens was utter annihilation. Let's rush out and fight with them. That's right. We cannot allow the elites of ancient times to die in vain for us. The martial artists who spoke were already boiling with fighting spirit. At this time, there was no one that feared death. All they wanted was one last valiant war. They believed that by using the protection of the ancient elites, they could rush out and surely cause deep losses to the abyssals. No. We will stand back and take advantage of this time to meditate and recover. Divine Dream immediately rejected the offer, leaving the martial artists around her confused. Our goal is not to cause heavy losses to the abyssals but to defend Lin Ming. Divine Dream shook her head. Even if they joined forces with the ancient elites, they still wouldn't be a match for the abyssal army. just that evil alone could contend with at least 2 or 3 upper true divinities. And with those 4 upper true divinity demon kings added on, how could they possibly fight like that? If they all rushed out, even if they managed to slaughter their enemies for a day, they would eventually be destroyed. At that time, who would be left to defend Lin Ming? But if they stayed in the heaven and man array to restore their strength and used the array formation to struggle with the wounded abyssal army, they could at least delay for another 5 to 6 days. At that time, Lin Ming might leave seclusion. In the skies, the slaughter became increasingly brutal and violent. The ancient elites were nearly all killed off, but the abyssal army lost 700 to 800 Empyreans and over a dozen true divinities. When added with the 8 true divinities that had blown themselves up previously and those that had been swallowed up by evil, there were not many lower true divinities left among the abyssals. In terms of quantity, the abyssals didn't have many more true divinities than the 33 heavens. However, of the abyssal true divinities that survived, most were at the middle true divinity realm and above. With 700 to 800 more Empyrean masters supporting them, their strength still far surpassed the 33 heavens. These damned wretches! The 4 demon kings had thought that their offensive would be an overwhelming victory, but after suffering setback after setback, they were now incomparably enraged. Even though their opponents were clearly much weaker, they had still managed to drag things out until the present. The Lord Demon God gave us 20 days to finish this mission, and now 20 days have passed. We cannot delay anymore. Otherwise the Lord Demon God will punish us. Upon mentioning the punishment of the Demon God's tomb master, the complexions of the higher abyssals all turned ugly. The Demon God's tomb master had many methods of torture that were far worse than death. Break through that array no matter the cost, even if it's a suicidal attack. Good. We can no longer wait. The high-level abyssals glanced at each other. If necessary, they could even sacrifice evil. Evil was a quasi-totem-level abyssal created by the Demon God's tomb master using hasty methods and an upper true divinity abyssal as the foundation. In truth, the Demon God's tomb master had branched out a portion of his energy to create this killing beast, and his spiritual sea had been tampered with so that evil would show absolute loyalty to the Demon God's tomb master. If necessary, evil would sacrifice itself. You plan on sacrificing evil to blow up the grand array? That is the final method left to us. Otherwise, there is no alternate way for us to complete this mission. Several abyssals discussed their next plan of action. But then, just as they were about to take action, the vibrations passing through the Azura Road became far fiercer. In the last battle, the Azura Road had already been shaking. However, because the abyssals were busy fighting, they simply weren't able to care about such things. But now the trembling through the Azura Road had become far too intense. So intense that the 4 demon kings couldn't help but frown. Beneath their feet, the earth began to break open. The cracking of the earth continued at a horrifying speed. Fathomless fissures formed in the earth, recklessly spreading outwards to the end of the world. Just the width of a single fissure alone was several hundred miles, and they might even be millions or tens of millions of miles long. Is the Azura Road being destroyed? The abyssals were stunned. There was no excitement in their hearts. Rather, they had a faint foreboding feeling. And at this time, beneath the martial artists of the 33 heavens where Lin Ming was in seclusion within the void, a dazzling light began to shine out, as if a burning sun were being born in the earth. The abyssals were all panic-stricken. The unease in their hearts became increasingly strong. And within the heaven and man array, the martial artists of the 33 heavens held their breath. They stared unblinkingly in the direction of that divine light. Could it be? Xiao Moxian shivered. Her heart began to race. In that moment, she could sense Lin Ming's aura, and this aura was becoming increasingly intense. Lin Ming was leaving seclusion? His Majesty the Human Sovereign. The Human Sovereign has left seclusion. At this time, many martial artists of the 33 heavens started to realize this possibility. The great earthquakes occurring throughout the Azura Road might be an indicator of Lin Ming leaving his seclusion. That was right. Everyone had heard that the Human Sovereign had to fuse with the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe. Although they didn't understand how this could occur or the specifics, If the Azura Road was fused by Lin Ming, then perhaps it disintegrating because he left seclusion was possible. These wretches, just what are they babbling about? On the side of the Abyssal Army, the 4 demon kings all had incredibly ugly complexions. At this time they also realized that the most likely possibility was that Lin Ming had emerged. Don't panic. At this time, several upper true divinity abyssals barely managed to maintain their calm. Although Lin Ming has left seclusion, he might not have stepped beyond divinity. Don't forget, he has been wounded by the Lord Demon God. Right, that's right. As the abyssals spoke amongst themselves, the earth began to continually crack. Divine light shot out and a pair of massive black wings stretched out, covering the entire bed of the Azura Sea like titanic black clouds. These were the wings of a black dragon. Aodash, a resonant dragon's cry pierced into the highest heavens. Within the storm of energy, 2 cold lights shot out like a divine sword, thrusting into the skies and leaving the mind shaking. Lin Ming had most likely left seclusion, and those 2 cold lights were his burning gaze. Lin Ming! Lin Ming! The moment that Lin Ming appeared, the 4 demon kings stepped back in the skies, their pupils shrinking. This fear came from Lin Ming's aura. The aura was from the countless victories that Lin Ming had accumulated, from the countless powerhouses that had been felled by his hand, from the blood of all the proud sons of heaven who he had slain. This was an emperor's majesty that Lin Ming had cast himself. The 4 demon kings were awed and horrified. They drew back again and again, a cold chill running down their backs. None of them were able to summon the courage to face Lin Ming. There were too many legends concerning Lin Ming. Moreover, he was an opponent that even the demon god's tomb master somewhat feared. Before they even fought, they were already terrified in the depths of their hearts. The storm of energy faded away. A 1,000-mile-long black dragon stood above the ruined earth, and Lin Ming stood alone above the dragon's head, a spear in his hands. His body was straight and tall, but his appearance left one startled. He no longer appeared youthful and majestic, shining like a jade sculpture. Instead, his body was thin and his skin was charred black as if he had exhausted his blood vitality. When the demon god's tomb master's final strike destroyed the amethyst heavenly palace, it had also caused Lin Ming to appear in everyone's vision for a brief period of time. Back then, he still had this burnt appearance and it had left everyone worried. Would Lin Ming have received some sort of irrecoverable wound? Now that his seclusion had ended and he emerged, everyone thought that he would be restored to the appearance of his peak state. But his body was still like before. Not only was Lin Ming's figure thin and withered, but his long hair lay scattered across his head like chopped grass. This spirit treasure clothing he wore had been torn to pieces, leaving nothing but rags hanging off his body. With Lin Ming's current appearance, all of the martial artists of the 33 heavens were left with heavy hearts. Did Lin Ming complete his fusion of heaven and man? Had he been severely wounded? If so, then how much combat strength would he have remaining? Hee. I thought that you completed your seclusion and stepped beyond divinity, but you are nothing but a dried-up well, a lamp that has lost all oil. Seeing Lin Ming's appearance, Deep King Road's sovereign laughed out loud, seeming to have found his courage again. That was right. The Lord Demon God's attack had been horrifying. In order to send out an attack of such strength, the Lord Demon God had sacrificed strength that he had accumulated for many years. Lin Ming had been forced to withstand that attack, so how could he not be injured? And even the Azura Road Master likely had his soul turned to ashes. Otherwise, why would he have disappeared? Lin Ming was strong, but no matter how strong he was, could he be stronger than the Lord Demon God? Stop with the act. Did you think we wouldn't know that your seclusion needed 10,000 years to complete, and even if you were given 10,000 years you still might not be able to succeed? Now, only 9,900 years have passed, so how could you have finished? The Great Flood Demon Kingdom Imperial Scholar tamped down the fear in his heart and stepped forwards towards Lin Ming. Your seclusion was interrupted by the Lord Demon God and you suffered a backlash. Now, you are likely suffering from a deficiency in blood vitality, and even if your aura is like this, just how much combat strength do you truly have left over? The reason you forcefully left seclusion now is because you know that not leaving is only a road to death. So how is it? How does it feel to fail right before you reach the end? The 4 demon kings all spoke one after another and agreed with each other. The more they spoke, the more they suspected that their words were correct. Not only did Lin Ming's cultivation not rise, but his strength fell instead. And on the side of the 33 heavens, all the martial artists held their breath. They were worried for Lin Ming, and seeing the abyssals forcing their way forwards once more, they subconsciously moved in front of Lin Ming and continued to activate the heaven and man array. At this time, not even Xiao Maxian, Lin Huang, or Jur knew what Lin Ming was thinking. He was like a mass of dense fog, leaving one completely unable to understand him. Then the black dragon whipped its wings and flew into the skies. Lin Ming stood on top of the dragon, flying closer and closer to the abyssals. Seeing Lin Ming fly towards them, the 4 demon kings were horrified. Although they had all spoken rampant and arrogant words, the truth was that it was merely a front and they were actually afraid in their hearts. They actually had no idea just how injured Lin Ming was. Attack him, destroy him, a demon king gnashed out. They had no other choice. Even if they didn't want to face Lin Ming, he has already left seclusion. So, would they even be able to escape? Moreover, even if they managed to escape from Lin Ming's grasp, even if they returned to the dark abyss, the Lord Demon God would likely punish them with a fate worse than death. Evil, rush forwards. The 4 demon kings came to a tacit understanding with each other. At this time, none of them dared to attack themselves. Rather, they activated the seal planted within Evil's soul, taking control of it and sending it into a suicidal explosion against Lin Ming. This was the safest method to deal with him. But the total amount of energy within Evil was terrifying. If it were to explode, it would be no different from a supernova, destroying all. With its soul seal activated, Evil was completely controlled. Its eyes turned blood red, and with a loud roar it rushed towards Lin Ming. Just die. With so many of our people being buried with you and even a totem-level abyssal dying with you, you should be more than content. Someone like you should have lived a glorious and heroic life. But what a pity you encountered the Lord Demon God and are doomed to be destroyed. Several demon kings roared out loud, trying to convince themselves and pump up their courage. They crazily poured their energies into Evil, and Evil began to rapidly expand like a balloon. At this time, the martial artists of the 33 heavens were able to see Evil about to explode. If such a giant totem-level abyssal were to explode, the force behind that would be unimaginable. But Lin Ming's complexion remained as calm and serene as before. Facing the menacing Evil whose body ballooned more and more, Lin Ming simply reached out a hand and gently and slowly grasped the void. "Ah!" The 4 demon kings that were pouring their energies into Evil suddenly cried out in alarm. In that instant, they were able to feel their energy and divine sense severed by a terrifying strength. Then, they stared helplessly on as the planet-sized Evil seemed to be grasped by a giant invisible hand and compressed. Pong! After Evil's head was squeezed to the limit, it directly blasted open. Evil's flesh and blood also scattered in all directions as its entire body disintegrated. This was not an explosion of energy but an explosion of pure flesh and blood. The moment Lin Ming reached out his hand, all of the energies within Evil's body had been controlled by Lin Ming, and it was left unable to explode itself at all. Blood gushed out like an erupting volcano, recklessly falling all over the skies. Evil's flesh and blood was crushed to goo as it started to flow out from its broken body. Sounds of Evil's cracking skull filled the world. This was a horrifying sound. One left that one's scalp tingling with fear. The 4 demon kings all stared at this scene with wide eyes, their palms wet with sweat. Turbulent waves rose up in their hearts. They already expected that Lin Ming was strong, likely very strong, but they never imagined he could make such an attack. The massive planet-sized Evil that had such a hard skull protecting it was actually pinched to death? When it came to Evil being killed by Lin Ming, the truth was that the Abyssals weren't shocked. Before the attack began, they had already planned for the worst-case scenario. If Evil couldn't severely wound Lin Ming by self-explosion and simply died, then that wouldn't be strange. Evil could be pierced through by Lin Ming's spear or even overwhelmed with an even greater amount of energy. There were all sorts of possibilities for how Lin Ming could defeat evil. But they never thought that the massive, planet-sized evil would actually be pinched to death by Lin Ming no differently from a frog. Just what kind of abnormal strength was this? Now it seemed that Lin Ming had likely completed his seclusion. In other words, he had stepped into the realm beyond divinity. When one's strength reached the peak of true divinity and when one's laws simultaneously reached perfection, then one would be able to step into this boundary. This was the same boundary that the Azura Road Master, Immortal Sovereign, and Demon God stood upon. What do we do? The higher abyssals turned to the 4 demon kings. All of them panicked as they searched for help. But the 4 demon kings were also left at a loss for what to do. Facing Lin Ming, they were no different from a bunch of ants in front of a lion. How could he have left seclusion so early? He had to withstand several attacks from the Lord Demon God. So how could he possibly have completed his seclusion? A demon king roared out in unwillingness. But no matter how much he roared, it was all meaningless. Lin Ming was already rushing towards them. Or it was more accurate to say that he only took a single step forwards to instantaneously teleport in front of the abyssal army. His figure was relatively smaller compared to the abyssals, but for the abyssals right now, the Lin Ming in front of them was no different from a god that stood upon the highest heavens. The 4 demon kings all held their breath. The pressure emitting from Lin Ming was simply too great, so heavy that it left them gasping for breath. Their hands and feet turned cold and their shoulders seemed to carry a weight so immense that they couldn't help but kneel down in the air. They had already lost all courage to resist Lin Ming. Wait! Don't attack us. I will recognize you as my lord and master. An abyssal grit out from between clenched teeth, unable to resist the pressure. He hoped that there was some glimmer of a chance that Lin Ming could let him be and simply plant a slave seal in his body. For martial artists, living with a slave seal planted within them was a fate worse than death. The 4 demon kings were certainly unwillingly to exchange their lives to live on as slaves. But now, it was likely that Lin Ming would fight the demon god's tomb master in a final battle. If Lin Ming controlled them and was killed by the demon god's tomb master later, then wouldn't their freedom also be restored? Hearing the cunning suggestions of these abyssals, Lin Ming only smiled. He reached out a hand. The many abyssals sucked in a breath as they saw this, unsure what Lin Ming was planning to do. Would he plant a slave seal in them? Or would he kill them? Facing this dark star Lin Ming that could even pinch evil to death, none of them dared to escape. Thinking about it, Lin Ming only needed to open a force field to completely trap them like flies in a spider's web, unable to escape at all. From the heavens and earth of the universe, infinite energy began to condense in Lin Ming's hand, becoming increasingly strong. This terrifying amount of energy left the abyssal stunned. Just what was Lin Ming planning to do? When Lin Ming killed evil, he had simply needed to reach out his hand and grasp the air. He hadn't condensed energy at all. To kill the abyssals, he didn't need such extravagant motions. It wasn't just the abyssal demons, but even the martial artists of the 33 heavens were left puzzled. As Lin Ming gathered more and more strength in his hand, the Azura road beneath their feet began to disintegrate at an increasing pace. A crack of unprecedented size began to race through the middle of the Azura road. The Azura road was long and linear, just like a straight road. This was where its name had come from. And now, a massive lengthwise fissure was spreading through the Azura road. This fissure was millions of miles wide and countless billions of miles long. From start to end, the entire Azura road was cracked open. The Azura road had been divided in two. Magma started to gush out from deep underground, forming turbulent waves that rose up into the skies. The void collapsed and disappeared. Massive mineral lodes broke apart, turned into the purest form of energy that was absorbed by some unknown existence. The various mystic lands that dotted the landscape, the innumerable danger zones, all of them fell apart. The Azura road was being destroyed. This was true destruction. This level of destruction left everyone stunned. This is... Look below! Someone suddenly cried out in alarm. They discovered that the fissure that had broken through the Azura road wasn't fathomless at all. Rather, deep down, one could see something shimmering with an icy cold light. There was actually a giant cylinder buried deep in the Azura road. This cylinder shined with a metallic luster and was abnormally long. If one used the divine sense of a true divinity to probe this cylinder, they would discover that it extended from one end of the Azura road to the other. What is that? This is. Everyone, whether they were abyssals or martial artists of the 33 heavens, were all shocked speechless. Beneath the earth of the Azura road, there was actually a giant metal cylinder. Could this giant metal cylinder be the reason for the Azura road's shape? The Azura road was indeed formed in an extremely strange shape. Normally, when one formed their own world, it would be in the shape of a square or circle, giving it an overall comprehensive and whole feel, unlike the long road that was the Azura road. The earth completely disintegrated and countless mountains and rivers broke apart into dust and ashes. The sea vanished into mist and the entire Azura road finally and completely shattered, placing the metal cylinder in full view of all. It was unimaginably huge, like a divine pillar that supported the entirety of the 33 heavens. And at the end of this divine pillar was an icy sharp edge, one that was dark and glossy, fierce and horrible, like a peerless weapon. Weapon? Could it be? This thought suddenly lit up in everyone's mind. This giant cylinder was actually a pole, a spear that had been enlarged countless times over. Heavens! People couldn't help but cry out in alarm. The divine spear that could pierce through the cosmos had been buried beneath the Azura road. It was even possible that the Azura road itself was formed by this divine spear. Or, it could be that the Azura road master's ultimate goal in creating the Azura road was to utilize the infinite destiny and resources accumulated over 10 billion years, to use the blood of all those outstanding elites that had sprinkled upon the earth, to forge this divine spear. This was the reason for the Azura road's strange shape. The spear began to shrink and shrink again. Lin Ming looked towards this ultimate divine weapon that floated in the void. This was a spear capable of destroying a world. And what he wanted to destroy was the world of the demon god's tomb. To use a world as a weapon to destroy another world. Just what sort of crazy idea was this? However, for Lin Ming, this weapon was still incomplete. He began to condense energy once more. Through the countless layers of space, the already refined Akashic Dream Universe also began to disintegrate. The Akashic Dream Universe was created by Immortal Sovereign. It was originally an incomparably massive spiritual world without any true physically substantive life inside. And when Lin Ming began to refine the Akashic Dream Universe, the Spiritas had already severed their spiritual connection with the world. The giant Akashic Dream Universe began to shrink and shrink again. In the boundless sea of stars, the Akashic Dream Universe finally turned into the phantom of a great spiritual god. Its body was hazy and dim, completely blurry, simply unable to be seen clearly. This spiritual god phantom passed through layers of the universe, stepping through space until finally arriving in front of Lin Ming. This phantom seemed to be Lin Ming's own incarnation. At this moment, Lin Ming seemed to have become a true and legitimate god, wielding the heavenly Tao and controlling the cycle of samsara. The Akashic Dream Universe had disintegrated and turned into this divine phantom. Whether it was the abyssals or martial artists of the 33 heavens, they were all shocked. This divine phantom was, as everyone was lost in shock and awe, that giant divine phantom turned into a flow of light that fused into the world destruction spear. Divine light burned like a conflagration of flames. The endless starlight in the universe seemed to converge at this moment, all of it swallowed up by that pitch-black spear. This feeling was as if the spear had sucked out all the energy in the universe. That divine phantom is. The voices of the 4 demon kings shivered. They wanted to flee, but beneath the immense pressure they couldn't even move their bodies. Moreover, they felt as if the energy within their bodies would be drawn out by this demonic spear. This divine phantom finally fused together perfectly with the world destruction spear. This caused everyone to recall something. Is that an artifact spirit? This thought flashed through Divine Dream's mind. to use the Azura Road to forge the body and then cast in the artifact spirit with the Akashic Dream Universe. Were all of these things arranged earlier, or was it done by Lin Ming himself? Or could it be that this was the Azura Roadmaster's original plan, and after Lin Ming fused together the highest laws of heaven and man, he had finally managed to complete the last step, to thoroughly refine two great worlds and use these two worlds as the main source to forge his own life weapon. This was the method Lin Ming used to refine these worlds. Since ancient times, ever since a peerless divine weapon has been born, it must drink blood. On this day, I forge the spear and bring it into existence. All of you shall be its blood sacrifice. Lin Ming said, indifferently looking at the thousands of abyssals before him as well as the 30-some abyssal true divinities. Lin Ming's gaze seemed to overlook all of existence, bringing with it a pressure that could not be defied. Ah! The abyssals were frightened beyond compare. Using their final ounce of strength, they scattered in all directions in hopes of escape. But beneath the force field and pressure, how could they possibly escape? The long spear broke through the void, piercing through the heavens. Screams sounded out one after another. The thousands of abyssals began to explode beneath the pressure of the terrifying strength, their blood blooming like flowers in the sky. Even the 4 demon kings were unable to resist. In the end, they also suffered the fate of a cruel death. These were enchanting blooms of blood formed from thousands of abyssals dying in unison. Such a scene shocked the heart and mind. It had to be known that every splash of blood came from a peerless abyssal master. Such a scene hadn't even occurred in the ancient war 10 billion years ago. All of the blood, even evil's flesh and blood, was all absorbed by the world destruction spear. In that originally pitch-black spear, a faint red luster appeared. With the Azura Road as the spear body and the Akashic Dream Universe as the spear soul, this was a weapon that had been refined for 10 billion years and cast using the 2 highest laws. With the blood sacrifice of 8,000 Empyreans and 30-some true divinities, Lin Ming used his beyond divinity strength to wield this world destruction spear. Pa! It finally shrank into a normal-sized spear that fell into Lin Ming's hand. Lin Ming slowly turned around, his eyes like cold arcs of electricity. He looked at a place deep in the void, fighting spirit gushing out from him like a burning star. At this moment, Lin Ming could feel his body filled with endless strength. The world destruction spear in his hands could be called a weapon, but in truth it was no different from a part of his body. It was as close to him as his flesh and blood, and whether it was his aura, divine soul, inner world, life wave fluctuations, spirit mark, everything that made him was cast as one with this spear, completely inalienable. With a thought, Lin Ming's body directly integrated into the world destruction spear. Lin Ming vanished. Man and spear had become one. Rumble, rumble, rumble. At the point of the world destruction spear, thunder and flame wildly gushed out. Endless fog appeared in the void and a black hole-like space channel appeared in front of the world destruction spear. Storms howled through the void. The world destruction spear suddenly flew out, passing through the world, tearing through stars. As it vanished through the space channel, it seemed to carry away all the energy in the universe. Lin Ming. Looking at the direction that Lin Ming disappeared in, the martial artists of the 33 heavens held their breath. At this time, they had already guessed just what Lin Ming was planning to do. Lin Ming wanted to engage the demon god's tomb master in a final showdown. This would be the last battle, one whose result would determine the future of the 33 heavens. For Lin Ming, the layers of space existed in name only. As he passed through space, distance lost all meaning. He shattered through space barriers again and again. The God-lamenting wall isolated out the different heavens of the 33 heavens, and this was a barrier that even true divinities found difficult to overcome. But to Lin Ming, the God-lamenting wall was as frail as glass. He quickly flew from the Azura Road, through the ancient universe, and into the skies above the dark abyss. Infinite killing intent burst out from their eyes. The world destruction spear came crashing down. Kacha! The world destruction spear pierced through the skies of the dark abyss, flew through the world and plummeted into the black earth. This spear was like a coiling dragon column that fell down from the highest 9 heavens. It broke through all barriers, an unstoppable force. The heavy black earth was pierced through by the divine spear, and the first level of the dark abyss was forcefully ripped open. The dark abyss was formed by 18 independent spaces superimposed upon each other. The earth of the first level was the skies of the second. As the world destruction spear tore through the earth of the first level, it also ripped open the heavens of the second. Because of the massive opening, endless world strength began to flow out. For Lin Ming, who had cultivated the inner and outer universes to the extreme, who comprehended the highest laws and who had also reached the boundary of fusing together heaven and man, absorbing the world strength that leaked out from the dark abyss was no problem at all. Thus, while the world destruction spear pierced through the first level of the dark abyss, the waves of energy winded backwards, and all the endless energy that flowed forth from the dark abyss's first level was absorbed by the world destruction spear. The earth cracked apart, skies turned dark gray, and the seas dried up. The entire dark abyss seemed to have all of its spiritual energy completely siphoned away. After absorbing this strength, the world destruction spear became increasingly powerful. Without slowing in the least, it broke into the seas of the dark abyss's second level. The seas were sundered and massive 10,000-mile waves rose up. The dark abyss's second level was also pierced through. By absorbing the world's strength, the world destruction spear became increasingly fierce, increasingly powerful. Thunderclaps rolled through the world. Storms swept across the void. Layer after layer of the dark abyss was broken open. Lin Ming fused together with world destruction spear, fusing together infinite strength in this strike. Finally, he pierced through the dark abyss's 17th layer and arrived at the space of the demon god's tomb. Lin Ming clearly remembered the warning that Immortal Sovereign had given him before he left the demon god's tomb. The demon god's tomb master was able to control everything within the demon god's tomb, and was the absolute ruler of that land. He must never fight the demon god's tomb master within the demon god's tomb, unless he had the ability to break apart the world of the demon god's tomb. Just how firm was the demon god's tomb? This was a world that had survived the great shattering of the last universe. But today, Lin Ming would pierce through it. Lin Ming's spear was named the World Destruction Spear, and the world it would destroy was the world of the demon god's tomb. The demon god's tomb master had fused together with the demon god's tomb. As long as this world was destroyed, then the foundation of his strength would also be ruined. This was the best and only method to defeat the demon god's tomb master. Break! Lin Ming gave a deep roar, his voice echoing straight into the dark abyss's 18th level. The totality of Lin Ming's strength was condensed into this strike. He had poured the entirety of his lifetime of laws and all of his cultivation into this attack. Bang! The point of the world destruction spear thoroughly pierced through the world barrier of the demon god's tomb. A beam of divine light passed through the world, as if the sword of a spiritual god was breaking it apart. Energy scattered outwards, forming horrifyingly large explosions. It was like the great shattering of the universe had arrived early. Endlessly energy storms swept out, completely disintegrating the 18th layer of the dark abyss. The demon god's tomb was torn apart by Lin Ming. Today, this world that was said to be indestructible was actually broken apart by Lin Ming. In that moment, a powerful impact of energy rushed out from the demon god's tomb, causing Lin Ming's body to shake and nearly vomit out a mouthful of blood. Rich world strength burned all around Lin Ming. Fused together as one with the world destruction spear, he was like a burning meteor as he crashed down into the boundless earth, pounding open a terrifying pit that was millions of miles deep. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The vault of heaven collapsed and the earth caved in. This apocalyptic scene was like the end of times had arrived. As the world began to break apart, the originally indestructible demon god's tomb suddenly became frail. Lin Ming shot out from the massive pit. As he rose up with his scattered hair, he was like a newly born war god. Pa pa pa. Burnt black skin cracked and fell off from Lin Ming's body, rustling down all around him. Lin Ming lifted the world destruction spear, stepping forwards one step at a time. His originally dried and withered mortal body began to shine after the old skin fell off, becoming as glorious and beautiful as jade. You're done for. You have lived for far too long. Your era has been ended, by me. Lin Ming looked at the surging energy in front of him. This was the Emperor Bone Sea. Dense infernal energy and death energy gushed out from the Emperor Bone Sea, recklessly filling the air. Lin Ming could clearly feel the pained cries of ancient souls, as well as that abyssal demonic aura. Death energy became increasingly rich before turning into black smoke that was visible to the naked eye. The black smoke began to rise up like an inferno. An old man with a head of sparse white hair emerged from the black smoke. His body was as thin as a skeleton and his eyes were filthy. His complexion was that of a dying man, of fading embers. He was like a dried corpse that had been slumbering in a grave for 100 billion years. Step by step, he moved towards Lin Ming, his movements stiff and awkward. As this old man saw Lin Ming, dreadful waves of killing intent flashed out from his filthy eyes. Seeing this hideous and grotesque demon god, Lin Ming coldly smiled. It looks like, in the end you were unable to achieve eternal life. You had fused together with the demon god's tomb, but unfortunately, the demon god's tomb has been destroyed by me. Because the universal system here has collapsed, the energy that was bound by it has also escaped. With your life forcing having been drained, you can no longer fuse with the demon god's tomb. You are done for. Jejejej. The demon god bizarrely cackled, as if he had gone completely insane. If I kill you and swallow you alive, I can still make up for all the vitality I lost. I can still repair the demon god's tomb. Now die. Kacha. Kacha. The demon god's tomb continued to collapse upon itself, disintegrating. At this time the demon god was like a wild beast. His hair spread down his head like withered grass, and his thin hands had turned into grisly claws. A faint trace of blood-red light shimmered in his filthy eyes. He needed to swallow Lin Ming now, otherwise he would slowly weaken due to the collapse of the demon god's tomb, eventually becoming a lamp that lost all oil. Sheng Mei. Where is she? Lin Ming coldly asked. 10,000 years ago his spiritual connection with Shang Mei had been severed, and he had no idea what had happened to her. At that time, Lin Ming had been unable to leave the Azura Road, nor was he able to help rescue her. His strength was far from being enough. If he were to meet the Soul Emperor, then it would have been a sure death for him. He knew that his wife was in a great danger, but there was nothing he could do. The pain and guilt he felt could be imagined. In these past years, Lin Ming would periodically worry over Shang Mei. And although he knew that the demon god wouldn't answer him, he still couldn't help but ask this question. Sheng Mei? The demon god diabolically cackled. That whore was used as a blood sacrifice by me, otherwise how would I have been able to open up the eternal wall? Jejej! Seeing the demon god wildly laugh, Lin Ming's eyes flashed with thick killing intent. He didn't believe the demon god because at the time he felt that Shang Mei hadn't died but had instead been isolated out by some sort of mysterious strength. Moreover, what was without doubt was that the Soul Emperor's plan to use Shang Mei as a blood sacrifice had failed. Otherwise the Soul Emperor wouldn't have dragged out time for so long before managing to open the eternal wall. But no matter what the reason was, the chief culprit behind Shang Mei's troubles was the demon god in front of him. Lin Ming grasped the world destruction spear and was about to attack. But then his thoughts shook. This is. A weak yet marvelous connection touched Lin Ming's heart. It came from a far, far off place. This sort of connection was like the reunion of old friends or family, leaving one recalling fond memories. Could it be? Lin Ming's thoughts changed course. Without spending any time bothering with the demon god, his figure flashed and he flew out from the giant crack in the demon god's tomb. You wanna run? As the demon god saw Lin Ming run away, he fiercely grit his teeth and chased after him. The truth was that he also feared Lin Ming, but he had no choice but to chase after him. This was because the demon god's tomb had broken to pieces, and if he wanted to repair it, he required a massive amount of energy. Currently, all of the powerful abyssals had been slain by Lin Ming. Like this, the demon god had no other source of nourishment. If Lin Ming didn't die, then the demon god would be unable to repair the demon god's tomb. And because the demon god's tomb was broken open, the world's strength within would continuously leak out. This would cause the world of the demon god's tomb to become increasingly fragile until it was the same as any other ordinary great world. Once this happened, destroying the demon god's tomb would be easy. How could the demon god simply sit idly back and watch this happen? He raced out of the demon god's tomb through the gap, feeling the world's strength gushing out from the world in a storm all around him. As he felt this strength dissipate into the void, he felt his heart drip blood. Lin Ming's speed was incredibly quick, but the demon god followed right behind. The two raced through layers of space boundaries one after another. In front of Lin Ming and the demon god, all of these barriers were like doors that were opened wide, none of them able to stop them. The further Lin Ming flew, the closer the sense of connection in his heart became. Finally, he flew to somewhere in the void and reached out his hand. Shwa! Space tore apart. Lin Ming reached his hand into the space slit and fished out a gray cube. This was the magic cube. Considering the time within the time enchantment, Lin Ming had already been separated from the magic cube for tens of thousands of years. But now, as he felt this connection humming in his blood, he was overjoyed. The magic cube was not only a divine tool to Lin Ming, it was his memories, his past, something that had carried far too many burdens with him. The magic cube had followed Lin Ming during his travels. The magic cube had watched as Lin Ming began from nothing and slowly stepped onto the road of martial arts, becoming a young elite, a proud son of heaven, and finally taking that final step beyond divinity. Although the magic cube was only an item, Lin Ming's feeling towards the magic cube were far more profound. Unfortunately, even though Lin Ming found the magic cube, he still hadn't found any information about Xianxia. It was like she had completely disappeared from the world. With Lin Ming's current strength and the power of his divine sense, even if Xianxia were layers of universes away, he would still be able to find her. But, for his sense not to reach her, that was actually strange. Lin Ming sighed, his thoughts filled with worry. Whoosh! Closed behind Lin Ming, the demon god came flying straight in. The demon god suddenly came to a screeching halt. He stared at the magic cube in Lin Ming's hand, and his complexion turned horrendously ugly. That thing, just how? The demon god was left speechless for some time. But as Lin Ming saw the demon god's reaction, he roughly understood just why the magic cube was here. Lin Ming originally thought that the magic cube had been wrested away by the demon god. But he never imagined that Immortal Sovereign would actually have such methods to send it away. Thinking about it, this was also reasonable. When Immortal Sovereign joined forces with the highest demon lord and also had the help of the numerous ancient demons in the Emperor Bone Sea, that allowed him to control the demon god's tomb to a certain degree. With such control, sending away the magic cube wouldn't have been difficult at all. Immortal Sovereign used the magic cube to control the Emperor Bone Sea, but that was only in order to create trouble for the demon god. He hadn't thought that he would be able to kill the demon god. Immortal Sovereign clearly knew that he wouldn't be able to resist the demon god afterwards. So when he realized that his time was near, he sent the magic cube away. Wanting to defend the magic cube was impossible, but hiding it would be far simpler. Moreover, the demon god likely didn't know that Lin Ming had given the magic cube to Immortal Sovereign. He probably assumed that Immortal Sovereign had some hidden ace up his sleeve that he had used to control the Emperor Bone Sea. With how the situation was back then, the demon god was likely in a hurry to quickly refine the demon god's tomb, so how could he spend energy and time on searching for something like the magic cube that may or may not have existed? And when Lin Ming had given the magic cube to Immortal in the past, Immortal had recorded Xianxia and his own spirit mark in the magic cube. As long as he felt this aura, it would be easy to find it. Senior Immortal, thank you, Lin Ming quietly said, feeling heartfelt gratitude and admiration towards Immortal Sovereign. Immortal was truly an extraordinary character. Even after his death, his methods were still transcendent. If the magic cube had fallen into the demon god's hands, Lin Ming would still be able to take it back. But he wouldn't have been able to tolerate the demon god destroying the bloodline connection that he had formed with the magic cube through their life and death tribulations. The Stone of Eternal Life, What a wonderful method, the demon god mumbled, clenching his jaws. Lin Ming narrowed his eyes, his gaze burning as he stared at the demon god. He knew that immortal sovereign had likely been thoroughly destroyed by the demon god, and not even his remnant soul would have been left over. To a mortal, this might have been freedom. But as Lin Ming thought of this, he still felt a knife twisting into his heart. The grudges of immortal, the grudges of Xianxia, the grudges of all the elites of the 33 heavens, the grudges of the primal god race, the grudges of the countless lives that died. All these blood debts could be paid by the demon god's death, paid with his blood. The skies above the dark abyss had already completely darkened. The stars and moon were all swallowed up by the inky darkness, and if one reached out their hand, they couldn't even see their 5 fingers. The riotous heaven and earth origin energy became increasingly fierce, as if the entire dark abyss would collapse in on itself. The demon god's tomb was the foundation of the dark abyss. With the demon god's tomb pierced through by Lin Ming, the foundations of the dark abyss itself were shaken. Lin Ming grasped the spear in his hands and started to gather his strength. In front of him, the old and withered demon god fiendishly grinned. Suddenly his bent body began to shrink down. His dried-up flesh started to rot and decay, rapidly turning into a pool of slimy flesh and blood. Bang! A massive amount of world strength descended from above, all of it pouring into this decayed flesh and blood. The demon god's tomb had been sundered and the strength it had accumulated for over 100 billion years dissipated with it. But this strength could be used by the demon god. Woo woo woo. In this frenzied storm of energy, the pained howls of countless abyssal souls rang out. There were even living abyssals that were sucked into the storm. They all exploded within, turning into a bloody mist that was absorbed by the demon god. These living abyssals all came from the dark abyss. They were forcefully sucked in by the wild storm of world strength and turned into the demon god's nourishment. A cold light flashed in Lin Ming's eyes. How could he stare idly on as the demon god increased his own strength? If you had fused with the demon god's tomb, then I might have feared you. But since your fusion failed, you are no longer my match. With a great shout, the world destruction spear turned into a 10,000-foot-long spear light. This was a divine spear capable of annihilating a world. In Lin Ming's hands, without any special techniques, without any cultivation methods, it was already able to display the pinnacle of strength. See, cold spear light flashed. The mass of pulpy flesh and blood that the demon god turned into was blown up, sent flying in all directions. Not only did this strike disintegrate the Soul Emperor, it even disintegrated the void. Massive space cracks split through the universe, continuing for millions of miles. Dark gray mist gushed out from these space cracks. Lin Ming simply didn't care about this at all. As he was about to destroy everything in front of him, a vague figure suddenly appeared from the gray mist. This figure wore black clothes and was slender and sublime, as if they were the source of all darkness in the universe. Lin Ming froze. The world destruction spear in his hands froze. A familiar feeling swelled up in his heart, causing his mind to tremble. How could this be? Lin Ming was stunned. In front of him, an elegant woman was stepping towards him, slowly emerging from the space crack. Her jade-soft hands held up her long dress as she carefully walked forwards, like a beautiful village lady wading through a puddle-filled road. As Lin Ming saw this woman's appearance, he felt as if he were seeing things from a lifetime ago. Xianxia? How was this possible? Xianxia raised her head and looked at Lin Ming. Her pitch-black eyes seemed to contain thousands and millions of words. But she didn't say anything at all and instead slowly walked towards Lin Ming. Lin Ming was dazed for a good period of time. Finally, he let out a deep sigh. The shock and anguish in his eyes began to gradually fade away, instead replaced by an icy cold killing intent. Without any warning, Lin Ming attacked. His spear thrust towards Xianxia's head. Ah! Xianxia's beautiful face paled and her eyes seemed to fill with infinite grievances and sorrow. But Lin Ming's spear didn't slow down at all. It would soon pierce through Xianxia. At this time, Xianxia's aura suddenly changed. Her gorgeous face twisted up, turning hideous and fierce. Her hands turned into razor-sharp claws that thrust towards Lin Ming. Pong! Xianxia collided with the world destruction spear and cried out in pain, turning into a fountain of light that faded away. Lin Ming knew that everything he saw just now had been an illusion. It was an extremely adept spiritual attack. Whether it was the demon god's tomb master's soul emperor avatar or his main form as a world spirit, he was someone that had reached perfection in soul and mental attacks. Even an upper true divinity level martial artist would be completely unable to resist this attack. Their mind would fall into illusion and their spiritual sea would eventually dry up, leading to death. Everyone had heart demons. Lin Ming was also the same. But Lin Ming's soul was far stronger. No matter how fantastic and profound the Soul Emperor's heart demon attacks were, Lin Ming would still be able to retain his rationality and sanity. Between him and Xianxia there existed an inexplicable spiritual connection. But this Xianxia that appeared before him clearly didn't have this connection with Lin Ming. Although she appeared completely lifelike and possessed both Xianxia's appearance and aura, she was nothing but a beautiful puppet to Lin Ming. To kill this illusion still caused pain in Lin Ming's heart. Although he knew that this was only an illusion of Xianxia, Lin Ming still felt uncomfortable in his heart, because Xianxia truly had disappeared and her fate was unknown. "You actually saw through me." A deep and hollow voice whipped into Lin Ming's ear. Immediately, Lin Ming felt his spiritual sea invaded. The moment that Lin Ming killed off the illusion of Xianxia, the demon god's tomb master had plummeted into his spiritual sea. The demon god's tomb master knew that because the world of the demon god's tomb had disintegrated, he was no longer Lin Ming's match. The demon god had lost the support of a world, and on the other hand, Lin Ming had managed to fuse two great worlds together and also comprehend the highest of laws. There was a simply insurmountable disparity between the two right now. The demon god's only way out was to swallow Lin Ming's spiritual sea and seize his body. His first target was the magic cube. He planned to take advantage of the brief moment when Lin Ming's spiritual sea had fallen into illusion to wrest away control of the magic cube. However, the demon god never thought that Lin Ming would see through his illusion attack in just several breaths of time and completely wipe it out. This left the demon god floundering in panic. Within Lin Ming's spiritual sea, the demon god had already transformed back into the appearance of his true form. It was a pitch-black figure, one that was incomparably large and formed of utter chaos. It had no fixed form at all except for a giant maw. Seeing the demon god's true form, Lin Ming finally understood why abyssals that successfully passed the abyssal ritual in the demon god's tomb would have such a drastically different appearance from other ordinary abyssals. In other words, these totem-level abyssals had inherited a part of the demon god. Thus, they also took on the appearance of this giant monster. Lin Ming could sense the demon god's soul force already spreading its tendrils towards the magic cube, wanting to erase his spirit mark within it. Lin Ming revealed a cold smile. "Since you came here, you might as well stay. Your body will turn into the purest soul energy and be taken by me." Ever since the shattering of the demon god's tomb, the demon god had lost his strength as well as his very foundation. The disparity of strength between him and Lin Ming had been pulled wide open, and the only place where the demon god had any chance of contesting with Lin Ming was a battle within their spiritual seas. In Lin Ming's inner world, the magic cube also whipped up a giant soul vortex. At the same time, the world destruction spear fused into Lin Ming's body and appeared in the skies above his spiritual sea. "It's always been me swallowing others, but you want to swallow me?" The demon god was enraged. However, his voice clearly lacked energy, and it was even tinted with a bit of fear. Those who walk the road of death should always expect that there will be a day when they too might be killed. You wanted to swallow all of existence to achieve eternal life, but in the end you are the one that will be swallowed. Lin Ming held the world destruction spear in his right hand and the stone of eternal life in his left hand. Millions of golden rays shot out from his body in brilliant splendor. Within Lin Ming's spiritual sea, thunder and flame wildly surged outwards. Endless world strength was drawn from all directions, even from layers of universes away, all of it swelling into Lin Ming's body. "Die!" The demon god emitted a heart-rending roar. By now his body was already ruined. The damage to the demon god's tomb had caused his strength to rapidly fade away. He had already lost all reasoning, and the only thought left in his mind was to kill Lin Ming. He opened his great maw, wanting to swallow Lin Ming whole. From his mouth, countless tortured souls flew out. They swept towards Lin Ming like a howling storm. At this time Lin Ming also attacked. His body turned into a flow of light that fused into the world destruction spear, merging together as one. The divine spear rose up with the magic cube, both of them shooting forwards. The energy storm all around suddenly converged upon itself, turning into divine light that pierced into the demon god's mouth. Time came to a standstill. The demon god completely froze. His body stiffened. His eyes began to darken, and his appearance glazed over. Life force rapidly faded away from the demon god's body, as if he had turned into stone. Then cracks began to appear along his body. Beams of golden light shot out from the cracks, shining into the highest heavens like swords of a divine god. These cracks slowly spread out until they covered the entirety of the demon god. Like this, the demon god that lost all vitality slowly sank into Lin Ming's spiritual sea. Wang! The magic cube crashed into the demon god's head. The giant demon god instantly disintegrated, and at the same time a black vortex swirled up around the magic cube, completely absorbing all of the demon god's source memories. This was a massive amount of memories that spanned a period of 100 billion years. In addition, with all the ancient abyssals that the demon god had swallowed in its lifetime, the total quantity of memories had reached an unfathomable degree. Even for Lin Ming, wanting to digest all of these memories was impossible. However, Lin Ming only wanted to seek out a very small and specific part of these memories. He soon found what he was looking for. He saw the Soul Emperor wanting to turn Shang Mei into a blood sacrifice. He saw Shang Mei being sucked into the eternal wall, saw the endless void shatter, saw a purple crystal card forcefully break through the storm of energy that was the Soul Emperor's attack and fly into the void. This is... Lin Ming was shocked. Shang Mei, fishy, and also the amethyst origin crystal had fallen into a space crack that suddenly appeared. Just what was that space crack? Lin Ming spread out his divine sense, searching the entire demon god's tomb. With his current level of strength, his divine sense could cover the near entirety of the 33 heavens. There were no space barriers capable of blocking his sense, but at this time he still didn't manage to find anything. It was as if this space crack had never existed. Lin Ming even went to the space where the eternal wall had originally been. After a careful period of searching, he still wasn't able to find anything. He frowned. This sort of situation had surpassed his understanding. Could it be that beyond the 33 heavens there was actually a world that existed parallel to it? Lin Ming didn't know how to go to this world. At least, he hadn't found a method yet. He shook his head, not thinking about this for the time being. He knew that his martial arts cultivation had yet to reach the peak. The time he had been cultivating for was far too short. Even with all the time he spent in time enchantments, he had only cultivated for around 40,000 to 50,000 years. Compared to the demon god who had lived for 100 billion years or the Azura Roadmaster who had lived for 10 billion years, it was simply unworthy of mention. Perhaps there would come a day when he could find out all the secrets in the universe and truly control the samsara of the heavenly Tao. At that time, he should definitely be able to go anywhere in the universe. He might even be able to reverse the cycle of life, reviving people from death. The road of martial arts knew no boundary. Lin Ming didn't know where he would end up, but he would continue walking forwards no matter what. And now, Lin Ming had to return to the 33 heavens. He knew that his wives, his children, as well as the innumerable heroes of the 33 heavens were all waiting for him, worried. In the 33 heavens, at the intersection point between the divine realm and Saint Convocation heavens, there existed a newly established great world. This world had a history of a mere 200,000 years so far and was called the Human Sovereign World. It was a world created by the human sovereign Lin Ming. It was made using his total lifetime of studies, his laws of heaven and man, as well as the infinite essence energy gathered from the 33 heavens and dark abyss. This world was even broader than the Azura Road of the past. It was a holy land which every genius of the 33 heavens yearned to visit. In the human sovereign world, there were many precious cultivating training areas as well as many popular trial lands that people chased after in packs. When Lin Ming established the system of rules in this world, he included the wonderful mysteries of the Azura Road as well as the spiritual spaces of the Akashic Dream Universe. Many geniuses sharpened their weapons and hearts, putting forth every effort and thought into struggling to obtain a single spot to enter the smelting trials of the human sovereign world. This was a world created by that godlike existence of the 33 heavens. He was a character who had climbed to the highest laws of martial arts, and the trial spaces he created held all sorts of lucky chances and unbelievable treasures. It was so rich in resources that it was hard for the average man to imagine them. If one could obtain just a tiny bit of these treasures, then it would be an inestimable benefit to a martial artist's future road of cultivation. Not to mention the geniuses of the younger generation, even Empyreans and true divinities wish to obtain certain inheritances. However, quotas for the human sovereign world's trials were extremely rare. Although the human sovereign world was incredibly broad, the number of trial lands was limited. Within the 33 heavens, there was humanity, the saints, the spiritas, as well as the ancient races. With all the various races added together, there was a countless number of races, and wanting to bloom brightly amongst them was easier said than done. I finally did it. I finally obtained a human sovereign token. Within a large city in the human sovereign world, 3 youths were excitedly chatting with each other. All of them wore the uniform clothing of a sect. After entering the human sovereign world, there were many trials and tests that one could take, and once one's results reached a certain degree, they could obtain a human sovereign token. With a human sovereign token, one could enter the human sovereign pagoda. The human sovereign pagoda was the final trial land that Lin Ming created, and it was similar to the Azura Road's final trial of the past. The Azura Road's final trial utilized the completion percentage as a tool for evaluation, and the human sovereign pagoda was also the same. When Lin Ming created the human sovereign world, he emulated many settings and rules that were once in the Azura Road. This was all done in commemoration of the Azura Roadmaster. A great deal of energy and time had been spent in creating this world. One reason he did this was to obtain an even more perfect boundary of heaven and man by observing the process of creating a world. Another reason was to create more opportunities and allow the younger generation of the 33 heavens to grow. Through the many years that Lin Ming cultivated the martial path, he had obtained many comprehensions into martial arts and also learned of far too many cultivation methods. All of these things were precious treasures. Lin Ming didn't plan to discriminate against anyone. As long as one possessed the talent and will, they could obtain these inheritances. Inheritances were far too important. If one had to investigate the reason as to why the Great Calamity 200,000 years ago had been so brutal and tragic, the main reason would be because of the vast difference in strength between the Dark Abyss and the races of the 33 heavens. If it weren't for Lin Ming being able to turn the tides of the war just in time, then the 33 heavens would surely have been destroyed. Thus, Lin Ming wanted to restore the martial arts civilization of the 33 heavens to the level that it reached 10 billion years ago, or even surpass that standard. If the martial world was bright and strong, then masters would pour forth from the ranks of the 33 heavens. Like this, Lin Ming would have no need to take action himself. The 33 heavens would have the ability to resist other unknown calamities in the future. Because of this, Lin Ming had spared no effort when he created the human sovereign world. In particular, when he was making the final human sovereign pagoda, Lin Ming had come up with all possible means to create all sorts of exquisite tests and trials and also laid down rich rewards without hesitation. This was why the human sovereign pagoda became the ultimate smelting trial that countless elites fervently wished for. There were all sorts of incomparably precious cultivation methods and heavenly materials inside that could make one's eyes go red with jealousy. Not just that, but if one's completion percentage was high enough, then they could listen to that person give a lecture about the laws, or there was even a chance to become that person's secret disciple. Compared to mere treasures, becoming that person's secret disciple was a lucky chance that one couldn't even imagine dreaming of. Treasures could be used for a while, but becoming that person's secret disciple was a glory that could be enjoyed for a lifetime. Whether one was a common martial artist or whether one was a proud son of heaven that came from a large sect, nothing mattered in front of that person. One's past status was utterly meaningless because that person stood at far too high a height. Compared to a towering mountain, a speck of sand was not much different from a tiny piece of gravel. As long as one could become that person's secret disciple, then they could leap to the heavens in a single jump. However, these three young disciples that just managed to obtain a human sovereign token clearly didn't entertain these fanciful dreams. They had already exerted themselves to their limit in order to obtain a single qualification token to enter the human sovereign pagoda, and wanting to become that person's disciple with their talent was no different from a moron babbling nonsense. Elder Senior Apprentice Brother, how high do you think our completion percentage will be? A disciple excitedly said, his face filled with anticipation. 50-something%. It will be hard to reach any higher. The Elder Senior Apprentice Brother shook his head. His words left the other two stunned. Only 50-some%? Would it really be that low? The three of them were famous figures from their native great world. Although they didn't have much hope of grabbing the spotlight once they reached the human sovereign world, 50-some% seemed a bit too low. It should be around that much. The Elder Senior Apprentice Brother shrugged. Cloud Moon should know. I naturally know. Cloud Moon came from the same great world as these three disciples. She was a proud daughter of heaven from that great world, and compared to these three disciples, she surpassed them in strength and talent. Even her looks were like those of a fairy maiden. With all of these factors combined together, Cloud Moon's fame in her native great world far outstripped these three disciples. Cloud Moon just barely managed to obtain a 60% completion rate. The rules of the human sovereign world state that one needs to obtain a completion rate above 90 in order to become a disciple of His Majesty the Human Sovereign. Those that obtain a completion rate above 85 can become his secret disciple, and those that obtain a completion rate above 70 can listen to His Majesty the Human Sovereign lecture about the Tao once. Further down from that, there aren't any more rewards. Cloudman's goal is also to enter the human sovereign palace and listen to that person speak of the Tao. That is, listening to their senior apprentice brother's words. The two other disciples were left dispirited. This was far too difficult. It is that difficult. Even if one obtains a completion rate of 70, being able to listen to His Majesty the Human Sovereign lecture about the Tao isn't easy at all. I hear that His Majesty hasn't given a lecture about the Tao for the last 200 years. Oh? Why is that? The two disciples were left speechless. To hold a single discussion once every 200 or so years, that was far too infrequent. His Majesty must cultivate. I heard that he has recently gone into seclusion. Cultivate. The two disciples glanced at each other, puzzled. They both felt this was a bit unbelievable. His Majesty the Human Sovereign already became the number one figure in the universe 200,000 years ago. Even the demon god was slain by His Majesty. In the heavens and earth, there is no one whose strength can compare to even a single % of His Majesty. So, why is he still desperately cultivating? The road of martial arts diverges in myriad paths without any end. It isn't some secret that His Majesty the Human Sovereign has been bitterly cultivating all this time. It is said that His Majesty has 2 wishes, and with his current strength, he cannot fulfill these 2 wishes. Even His Majesty cannot fulfill these 2 wishes? The 2 disciples were left stunned. Just what sort of wishes were these that even that godlike character wouldn't be able to complete them? Today was the day when the human sovereign of the 33 heavens would give a lecture about the Tao. There were no set times for these lectures. Sometimes they would occur 2 or 3 times every 100 years, and sometimes they would occur every several hundred years. Each time these lectures occurred, it would be a grand occasion for the entire 33 heavens. When the day arrived, throughout the 33 heavens, great masters would arrive from all the various true divinity sects and Empyrean sects, converging upon the human sovereign world. Generally speaking, during true divinity longevity feasts and large-scale ceremonies of true divinity influences, these types of events would draw many true divinity sects to gather and celebrate. But during these types of events, even though many influences came to pay their respects, they would at most send messengers. But when Lin Ming was about to lecture about the Tao, those that arrived would be the true rulers of all these large influences. This was also a day that many masters would look forwards to with deep anticipation. In the 33 heavens, there was no true divinity or empyrean that would miss out on such a chance. Even powerhouses that were deep in seclusion would quickly emerge when they heard that the human sovereign was about to give a lecture on the Tao, and would quickly hurry to the human sovereign world. In the eyes of ordinary martial artists, great world kings were already mighty overlords that governed over them. But even these people, and even half-step empyreans, didn't necessarily have the qualifications to listen to the human sovereign speak of the Tao. Every time these lectures of the Tao occurred, human sovereign Lin Ming would be frank and outspoken, not hiding anything about the Tao and speaking until he was finished. However, the heavenly Tao was faint and ethereal, and the laws that Lin Ming cultivated could not be expressed with words alone. How much one could comprehend would depend on their talent and good fortune. Besides the rulers of true divinity influences and empyrean influences, there were also extraordinary geniuses amongst the younger generation that had obtained the necessary qualifications through the human sovereign pagoda that could also attend these lectures. At this time at Human Sovereign Mountain, there was already a giant array formation that had been laid out, one that stretched out for thousands of miles. Only those with an empyrean level cultivation and above, or those who possessed a human sovereign token that recorded a completion rate of 70% or above, could enter the array formation and listen to the human sovereign's lecture. Although the requirements were harsh, the 33 heavens were simply far too large. There was no lack of people who possessed the requirements. Thus, within the array formation, numerous figures shuttled back and forth in the skies. Any one of these people would be one of the most peak characters of the 33 heavens, and if any one of them stood out they could shock and awe a great world. But on Human Sovereign Mountain, all of these people maintained incredibly respectful manners and decorum. As they arrived outside the array formation, everyone would slow down, hop off their mounts, or disembark from their spirit boats. And this was true whether they were true divinities, empyreans, or peerless geniuses. All of this was a sign of respect for human sovereign Lin Ming. It's been over 200 years already. His Majesty the human sovereign has finally emerged from seclusion to speak of the Tao once more. After all this time there are even more people who earned the qualifications to listen to that person speak of the Tao. This is why it's even livelier than before. But unfortunately, we do not have the qualifications to enter. The 3 disciples from before who had just managed to obtain their human sovereign token discussed amongst themselves. They arrived outside the array formation and looked onwards with respect and envy in their eyes, staring at the elites of the 33 heavens who flew through the skies above them. Although they didn't have the qualifications to enter the array formation, being able to bear witness to one of the grandest occasions of the 33 heavens was still a sight they'd never forget. What a splendid sight! If possible, I would love to be able to listen to His Majesty the human sovereign speak of the Tao just once. I hear that those who can listen to His Majesty speak of the Tao often gain considerable lucky chances. There were even some people who were suddenly enlightened and managed to make a breakthrough in their cultivations. I wonder if this is real or just an exaggeration. It's true. When His Majesty the human sovereign lectures about the Tao, he isn't only speaking about truths of the Tao. In fact, just by sitting there, a Tao field will form around His Majesty. His Majesty's boundary is far too high, and if ordinary elite geniuses were to sit in this Tao field, they would be able to withstand a baptism of the heavenly Tao laws in their meridians. To them, this is already the greatest advantage. Even if one doesn't understand His Majesty's lecture of the Tao, just sitting in this Tao field itself is a great lucky chance. The elder senior apprentice brother of the 3 disciples explained. He was the one who understood Lin Ming's lectures of the Tao the most, and his words caused his 2 junior apprentice brothers to boil over with excitement. Such a regaling tale, such an opportunity, left them fascinated to the extreme. Don't think about such useless thoughts. The likes of us should try our best to earn the qualifications to enter. Otherwise, even if we were able to go in now, we still wouldn't be able to obtain much. Without current strength, we simply wouldn't be able to understand the Tao truths that His Majesty the human sovereign speaks of, and we might not even be able to withstand His Majesty's Tao field. If we fainted because we couldn't withstand the Tao field and had to leave midway, then that would just be far too great a shame. Lin Ming's lecture of the Tao was a lucky chance but also a test. When Lin Ming spoke of the Tao, the laws around him naturally revealed themselves and fused together with the surrounding space. The laws that Lin Ming cultivated originally were the fusion of heaven and man. When the body became one with the universe, his Tao understandings would dissipate around him and form an independent universe in the surrounding space. And the pressure of this independent universe wasn't something that everyone could withstand. Thus, for those martial artists of the 33 heavens who lack talent or strength, even if they were able to listen to Lin Ming's lecture of the Tao, they still wouldn't be able to last through it. Elder Senior Apprentice Brother, you said that His Majesty the Human Sovereign is deep in seclusion when he isn't giving a lecture on the Tao, and he never stops in his cultivation, and this is all in order to complete 2 wishes he still has. What are those 2 wishes then? The 2 junior apprentice brothers humbly asked. The elder senior apprentice brother looked into the far-off distance and slowly said, "It is said that His Majesty has 2 wishes. One is to control the samsara of life and death and extricate himself from the coil of existence and nothingness. 200,000 years ago, the great calamity of the 33 heavens was far too brutal and tragic. Everyone suffered. Humanity, saints, spiritas, the ancient races, countless powerhouses sacrificed themselves, and this included many peerless characters and heroes, such as Immortal Sovereign, June Blue Moon, Empyrean Vast Universe, Empyrean Divine Mist. Of these people, many were His Majesty's friends and even his teachers. Yet, they died in battle to protect His Majesty the Human Sovereign. And besides these people, there is also His Majesty's most important teacher, the Azura Roadmaster. Because of the last war, the Azura Roadmaster overdrew his life and fell into a deep slumber. Even now he hasn't yet awakened. His Majesty the Human Sovereign created a second Emperor Bone C within the human sovereign world, and he sealed in the souls of many of those who sacrificed themselves in the totem towers. He hopes that one day he will be able to rule the heavenly Tao and reverse the cycle of life and death, reviving those who perished." The elder senior apprentice brother's words left the 2 junior apprentice brothers shocked. Those that died can still be revived? Is that even possible? There is always a possibility. His Majesty the Human Sovereign might not have stepped onto the peak of martial arts, but he has likely touched that peak. Since His Majesty is trying so hard to strive for this goal, he should have some assurances. I see. The 2 junior apprentice brothers glanced at each other, not sure what to say or feel. This had already surpassed their realm of understanding. Then there is still one more wish. What is it? The second wish involves His Majesty the Human Sovereign's beloved wife, Soul Empress Xianxia, as well as someone who once followed His Majesty, a little girl called Fishy. It is said that because of some unknown reason they entered a strange world and have yet to be found. As for what this world is like, no one knows. His Majesty the Human Sovereign's second wish is to understand every secret of the universe and uncover every corner to find this different world that Soul Empress Xianxia and Fishy disappeared to. Besides the 33 heavens, there is still another, different world? The 2 junior apprentice brothers asked, shocked. That's right. It sounds unbelievable. But there are some who say that this other world might be as vast as the 33 heavens,